Chapter 122, Let's Create Some Trouble. Thorns was traveling alone in the endless plains of Karst. The vehicle definitely looked scary and threatening, like a spiky porcupine. The vehicle was dragging a huge container as it traveled. It looked odd as if it had a light head and heavy torso. There were huge batches of raw materials worth millions stored in the container, all of which had been purchased by Han Xiao in a single consignment. Han Xiao was the only one on the car. As he was driving, he was looking at the radar coordinates. He was heading toward the ruins known as Grey Metal Ruins. After completing the mission at River Valley Manor, there was a large increase in the affection of the Blood Pack Society toward him. The Blood Pack Society was now friendly toward him. Based on his current progress, he would be able to hit the legendary level before the public beta. Also, he could complete the class change mission along the way and officially become a Night Stalker. The side profession he planned to attain was rarer in version 1.0. He planned to not only use it to attain new skills, he also prepared himself to advance up to level 40 and start another level advancement mission. The maximum level of an apprentice mechanic was 15. The higher the level, the larger the increases in EXP points. Based on his current efficiency at gaining EXP points, adding a side profession was a good move. Also, the side profession allowed him to improve his combat style. Before Han Xiao carried out the plan for his assault on the Germinal organization, he planned to create a secret base for him to deposit supplies and round up weapons and essential equipment. That was to ensure that he had a place to retreat to if his mission failed. Based on his current situation, the Farian company seemed like it was able to provide a reliable hideout. However, Han Xiao had cultivated the good habit of preparing alternative solutions and redundancies. Although the possibility of getting into a conflict with the Farian company was rather unlikely, he would still feel safer if he was completely in charge of his own fate. Anything could change in this world, and it was especially so for relationships. Han Xiao had seen too many of such cases, especially the relationships with his ex-girlfriends. More often than not, genuine feelings lost out to tactics in terms of attracting one's heart. If there was a color to love, it would be the color of forgiveness. The world was just too much of a mess, such that anyone could lose their footing if they were not careful. It was not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. Getting close to the ruins of the Grey Metal Ruins. The maroon soil looked like dried up spats of blood. Once the tires went past the dried up hard blocks of soil, the sound of the friction between the tires and the soil could be heard. Through the window, one could also see the oddly shaped plants that were sparsely growing on the plains. The land before his eyes indeed looked barren. In the distance, he could see the silhouette of an abandoned city. Grey Metal Ruins was a dead city that even the vagrants avoided. The only creatures that resided in the city were insects and animals. Grey Metal Ruins had once been the capital of an old regime, and green pastures had surrounded the city. When the fires of war reached the city, the place was reduced to rubble, and the green plains turned into a barren landscape. Mighty civilizations and abandoned cities coexisted on this planet. The world was constantly changing, regardless of it changing for better or worse. There was an abandoned base among the ruins that the outside world did not know of. The abandoned base was in fact Han Xiao's target. As Han Xiao moved closer to the city, the scene before his eyes became more dilapidated. Vines could be seen creeping along the walls of the wrecked buildings. The streets were completely empty and covered with moss. Only a couple of lizards hopped out from the cracks on the road. The rumble of the vehicle's engine seemed to have awakened the city. Bugs crawled out from the buildings and cracks on the roads. They rested along the street, watching the vehicle speed past them. They used their limbs to scratch their eyes and moved their antennae. On the south side of the ruins, there was a building that resembled a military facility surrounded by barbed wire. Fortunately, the wires were not charged with electricity. The interior of the building had collapsed. Han Xiao drove his vehicle in and parked outside a bunker with the red label S539. There was only small entrance left into the bunker. Dust particles were floating in the air, filling his nose. After Han Xiao alighted from his car, he took out the mechanical spider and threw it into the bunker. He had modified the camera on the spider. The spider was now equipped with thermal vision and electromagnetic sensors. It even had hearing abilities. Half an hour later, the spider reported that there were no signs of life in the bunker. Han Xiao then made his way into the building. He navigated through the darkness with his torch, making his way to a small room in the bunker. He found a small crack in the wall and pulled hard. An elevator well was revealed behind the wall. The abandoned base that he was searching for was in the basement of the bunker. Han Xiao knew this place very well. In fact, this base was also his in his past life. However, it was unfortunately taken over by a guild. At that point in time, Han Xiao had still been a young lad who was easily bullied by others. However, when he looked at the base again now, he realized that the base had great defensive infrastructure in place. As long as he was able to supply electricity to the building, the base was practically impregnable to attacks. He only had himself to blame for giving in to his enemies in his previous life. The underground base was very spacious and had 2 emergency passages. There were spider webs and dust everywhere. I shall call this place the Grey Metal Base. Han Xiao came up with a practical name for the facility. There was no source of energy in the base. Han Xiao took out the flashlights that he had brought with him to light up the place. He then started to execute the most important task, which was the energy modification operation. The Grey Metal Base previously had a cable that connected it with the power station. However, since the city was abandoned, the power station had stopped its operations. The power station was located some distance away from the Grey Metal Base. Han Xiao entered the power station only to discover that most of the generators were faulty. However, he never planned to rely on the old generators. He had expected such a scenario to occur, therefore, he had spent a huge sum of money and bought a batch of solar-powered generators. He dragged these generators out of the container and altered the wiring in the power station. He switched out the faulty items in the power station and connected the electric cable from the military base to his new solar-powered generator. When Han Xiao returned to his base, the base was already powered up. The lights were switched on, and the interior of the base was clearly shown before his eyes. The base, which had been covered in darkness for so long, was finally embraced with light. The solar-powered generators were clean, efficient, and discreet. The additional electricity that was not expended in the day would be stored in the batteries. The generated electricity would likely cover 1 full day of activity. Han Xiao started to clean up the base. Due to the prolonged period of inactivity, everything was covered in a layer of filth. It was while he was cleaning that he started to miss Luqian, who had superb housekeeping skills. Han Xiao had not seen Luqian for some time, and her cooking was something he longed for. I wonder what her reaction is for leaving without a word. Thinking back to old man Lu's repeated recommendation of his granddaughter, Han Xiao could not help but smile. After the housekeeping session, he carried the supplies out of his vehicle. The material and spare parts were all sorted out and stored. The bottles of water and canned food were placed in the gigantic fridge. Following which, he used some of his EXP points to raise his basic programming to LV.10. He then modified the main control room and created a chip to organize and store the data of all the activities in the base. The main use of the system was to map out the energy usage so that electricity could be better allocated for the different activities. For the next few days, Han Xiao was busy modifying the base, and it slowly began to take shape. The base was equipped with infrared, thermal scanners. The defenses put in place were light machine guns and booby traps. The bunker on the ground level was also repaired. Additionally, the large gate was fixed up so that the base was better hidden. However, the most important point was that Han Xiao created 3 robotic assistants to serve as his workers. The skill of elementary programming at the maximum level could create low-level chips that were able to store simple blueprints that the robotic assistant could follow and manufacture according to the plans autonomously. Han Xiao could also gain a part of the EXP from the items successfully manufactured by the robots. This meant that there would be incoming EXP for Han Xiao all day, every day. One robot assistant could generate 2,000 to 4,000 EXP, so 3 robot assistants could contribute a steady 10,000 EXP points. There was a limit on the energy that could be used by the Grey Metal Base, and the 3 robot assistants made it reach this limit. The stored raw materials and spare parts were also only sufficient for around 10 days of continuous activity by the robot assistants. The logistical flow of the system he had set up could not be disturbed. Han Xiao could also make use of this period of time to carry out his assassination mission and gain skills that could help him refine his process. If the earlier players wanted to develop a base, they could only employ a team of mechanics to complete their base. That was because most players had certain gaps in experience that they could not fulfill themselves. They had different areas of specialties in terms of their knowledge, and that meant that there were also many areas they were unfamiliar with. However, my 3 separate branches of knowledge are upgraded together. That makes me master the different aspects of the job alone. However, My strategy has a huge flaw of requiring me to possess an especially large sum of EXP that is several times more than that of normal players. Luckily for Han Xiao, he had his ways. The gray metal base might not be the largest, but it was definitely one that had all the necessary items that were required. The base also looked new and tidy after Han Xiao's refurbishment and housekeeping. Han Xiao could feel a deep sense of achievement when he saw the fruits of his labor. Finally, I am a man with some assets. After completing the modification of his secret base, it was time for him to begin his assaults on the Germinal organization. He had been left with no time to spare for the Germinal organization lately, and that resulted in the organization recovering and growing from the previous damage that Han Xiao had caused. Indeed, the Germinal organization had recovered by 0.01%. However, Han Xiao was not worried in the slightest. The reason he decided to carry out his activities at the later stage was because he had set his sights far. He was no longer aiming for the smaller bases of the organization. He wanted to do something big. Han Xiao's plan was simple and loud. He released all the information he had collected about the smaller bases to the 6 nations. Crazy but deadly. The 6 nations were old enemies of the organization. The moment they got their hands on the weakness of the organization, they would not rest until they caused grievous damage. As long as he dared to do such a crazy thing, the Germinal organization was bound to suffer intense damage. However, that would also destabilize the entire situation on planet Aquamarine. It was even likely for a change in the original storyline to occur. It was that which made the whole process exciting. To be scared of a change in the storyline was not the hallmark of a strong individual. A world that did not change was something a destroyer like Han Xiao was fond not of. Han Xiao clenched his fists. He could feel gushes of energy flowing through his body and confidence emerging out of his chest. I am no longer a weakling who is afraid of everything like when I first entered the planet. I have the ability to challenge and battle most people on this planet. Strength formed the base of one's power. To endure now was so that one could be powerful enough in the future, such that he no longer needed to endure. Now, Han Xiao could defend himself, and he could finally accomplish the initial goal he set for himself. Han Xiao connected his cell phone to the computer and created an anti-tracking application to disguise his actual number and address. He then dialed in a chain of numbers that he had memorized. "Hello, who is this?" Feng Jun's voice emerged out of the cell phone. "Guess," Han Xiao teased. Feng Jun almost choked. The sly voice was too familiar to not recognize. "You? How dare you call back?" Feng Jun was dumbfounded. Chapter 123, Germinal, there is something I have to say. In Division 13's headquarters, Director Gu Hui and the Intelligence Minister stared at the phone on the desk, while Feng Jun stood to the side with a clear look of nervousness. "Can we trace the location?" The technician replied hesitantly, "We can't break the opponent's anti-tracking protocol. He is a highly skilled hacker." Gu Hui's vein throbbed with anger. When did that guy become a hacker? How could I not know? After some deliberation, Gu Hui picked up the phone and said in a grave voice, "Han Xiao, you left Division 13 without permission. You violated the code of secrecy. This behavior is abominable." Han Xiao chuckled and laid bare Gu Hui's thoughts. "You want to ask me when I'm coming back, right? You should know better yourself." Gu Hui said. "I am not going back. Are you defecting?" Gu Hui's eyes darkened, and his tone changed. "You misunderstood," Han Xiao slowly said. "I still want to continue to work with you guys, but the way we work needs to change." Gu Hui frowned. "What do you mean?" The others in the room pricked up their ears to wait for Han Xiao's reply. With a click, Han Xiao hung up the phone. The Intelligence Minister was expressionless, but the twitch at the corner of his eyes revealed the storm in his mind. Gu Hui took a deep breath and thought to himself, "I am the director, I cannot flip the table. I am the director, I cannot flip the table." Ding. The phone vibrated with a new message notification. Gu Hui narrowed his eyes and opened the text message. A page of dense information was thrown into his view. He was struck dumb by the content of the message. It was all intelligence on germinal spaces in southern continent. It was very detailed and complete. Is this what he meant by changing the way we work? Gu Hui was uncertain. Nonetheless, his anger with Han Xiao dissipated. This was the intelligence they had always wanted, and Han Xiao had actually given it to them so easily. He's so sincere. Gu Hui was lost in thought. Han Xiao had demonstrated unexpected sincerity. The issue would be how he should deal with Han Xiao's identity. If he were to say that he was a defector, his action would benefit the interests of Star Dragon. But to say that Han Xiao would be returning to Division 13 would be untrue. Han Xiao had personally said that he would not go back. After some thought, Gu Hui made a decision. Stop searching for Han Xiao. Keep his official secret agent identity, and move his files to the field agent files. Feng Jun was taken aback. The director's decision would mean that Division 13 was reconciling with Han Xiao. They would acquiesce to Han Xiao's solitary behavior and regard him as one of their own. Division 13 was in charge of the formation of field agents. Field agents were employed under the department, but they could move freely. Only some meritorious agent or retired agents could get such preferential treatment. Although Feng Jun did not have a long relationship with Han Xiao, they were on good terms. Feng Jun was happy that, at least they would not become enemies. With the information he needed in hand, Gu Hui was in a good mood. He praised the intelligence minister lightly and was about to leave when the bespectacled secretary in the intelligence group stumbled in, panting for breath. Director. Minster. The intelligence departments from Hesla, Maple, Ordina, Theos, and Raylan have all sent us a request for communication. The look in Gu Hui's face hardened. Only with truly urgent incidents would the intelligence agencies of each country contact another country. It had been many years since they had a meeting between the different intelligence agencies from the 6 nations. What had happened? With a heavy heart, Gu Hui walked to the conference room. 5 individuals appeared on the big screen. They were the heads of the intelligence agencies from the other 5 nations. They had the same rank in their respective agencies as Gu Hui. What happened? Asked Gu Hui. As soon as he spoke, he found the 5 heads of intelligence agencies stare at him with a very strange look, making him feel a little confused. The representative from Ordina took the initiative and said, Division 13 Director, do you know Germinal's top wanted man, 0? Gu Hui stared dumbfounded. He had a bad feeling. What happened was, all 5 of us received intelligence from 0, including maps of Germinal secret bases across the south, west, and north continent. We have always been cautious about information from unknown sources, but he had added a line to his intelligence. Star Dragon's Division 13 can testify as to the credibility of my intelligence. So, we are here to clarify with you. Damn you. How could you even send the information to all the other nations and expect us to testify for you? Han Xiao, you just scammed us again. Gu Hui almost fainted from the shock. He could almost see Han Xiao's sniggering face in his mind. His set of equipment, the incomplete Phantom Ghost Sniper, electromagnetic skateboard shoes, facial simulator, and a full version of a magnetically controlled retractable armor would be able to fully support his variable sniping style of combat. This was a tactic that was very popular among the older mechanics. Since the equipment he produced had properties way beyond what would normally be at his level, it was obvious that his combat capability would be way more effective. With his enhanced equipment, his energy was about 1,100 auna. He was considered upper middle rank on Aquamarine. In addition, Han Xiao also had the NPC molding ability Basic Strength and Life. He was definitely able to take some hits. Flaming Will was upgraded to LV5, and the lowest multiplier was increased to 138%. Although this did not sound like much, with sneak attacks and critical strikes on weaknesses, even with the lowest enhancement, he could boost his capability significantly. As long as he avoided fighting someone crazily powerful like Bennett head-on, Han Xiao should be able to cope with most face-offs with ease. So, the assassination mission from the Blood Pack Society would naturally not be too much of a worry for him. Time flew past as Han Xiao completed more and more missions. He gained vast amounts of EXP and wealth, and he was growing stronger day by day. Mr. Black was also becoming feared by more and more underground forces. He had risen to the 10th position on the assassin leaderboard. He was finally gaining some fame. Meanwhile, the underground world gave Han Xiao a new nickname, Black Phantom. One could only take on a bad code name, not a bad nickname. Planet Universal Reputation Legend, Aquamarine Black Phantom, Darknet Assassin List. Legend has it that he comes from the darkness of the night with 1,000 faces. No one knows when he will come. No one knows when he will leave. When you see him turn away, the kiss of death has already been printed on your forehead, leaving fresh bullet holes in blood. He pays a bullet and takes away your life. He sounds pretty cool. In fact, when he learned that he had been given the nickname, Han Xiao did not know how he should feel about it. Black Phantom. Why don't you call me White Yaksha? Han Xiao had been one of the most active members in the underground world lately, and he was getting on the good books of the Blood Pack Society. They were even featuring him to attract talents. According to statistics from the Blood Pack Society, their business had finally stopped falling ever since Black Phantom came around. Their business was even slightly on the rise, attracting other assassins to them. They were leading in transaction volume. However, 2 months later, the attention of the whole world was on another big event. As the last civilized countries on Aquamarine, the Six Nations were so powerful that whatever they did would affect every single person in the world. Be it the underground, rogue warlords, or various organizational forces, everyone was always looking to the Six Nations to observe their actions, especially in terms of their military operations. After the wars of the old times, there was a delicate balance of order and chaos on planet Aquamarine. Wars continued to break out occasionally, openly or hidden, and it was not in the Six Nations' interest to cover up and pretend it was all peaceful. The delicate world situation tipped on this fateful day after 2 months. The Six Nations sent out troops almost simultaneously. The armies were sweeping across the 3 continents, wiping out Germinal bases one by one. It shook the whole world. The war came without any warning. The world fell into a turmoil. Many was starting to fear that the nightmare of a terrible war that happened decades ago would explode again. Their wounds from the war had not healed fully, and no one was too eager to be devoured by such a man-made disaster again. Even within the Six Nations, thousands and thousands of people took to the streets to protest against the war, but the governments have turned a deaf ear. To them, Germinal was the root of a disaster. As a terrorist organization that had been created to subvert the Six Nations, the conflict between the Six Nations and Germinal could be traced back to the war of the old times. Germinal had been gathering outlaws and rebels who were determined to subjugate the Six Nations. Until now, the two sides had been caught in a stalemate. It was such a good opportunity to crack down on the Germinal organization, how could they possibly miss it? For those who were more informed, they were not as surprised by the tough stance of the Six Nations as the intelligence they had gotten. Why did the Six Nations act simultaneously, and how could they launch precise attacks on the hiding grounds of Germinal? There was only one possibility: someone had provided a large amount of intelligence. In another way, this mysterious person providing the intelligence was the real puppet master behind the war. After many inquiries, the name of the man was leaked out from within the Six Nations. 0. Germinal's traitor. The underground world was shocked. Among the outlaws taken in by the Germinal organization, some were idealistic fighters while others were hooligans who had committed petty crimes. There were traitors in the past, but they had all hidden like street mice, afraid of being hunted down. 0 was the only person that had struck back at Germinal so openly, generating such chatter. How did 0 get so much intelligence? Was he a high-level officer in Germinal before he defected? Many were scratching their head over this. All this was a mystery. There was no way anyone could get an answer, but that did not prevent all the major powers from adding the name 0 to the threat list. A war is coming. Bennett looked up at the hazy sky with furrowed brows. His mood was as gloomy as the sky. Wang Yuan whispered to him from the side, "It seems like we need to get the shelter plan up ahead of schedule." "There are still a lot of things left unprepared." Bennett shook his head. "I guess we can never be fully prepared. Let's roll out the shelter plan. Contact some allies and get strong independent fighters to join us. We must rally all our forces." Chapter 124, Open Beta. In the Germinal organization headquarters at Andrea mainland. Bam! A fist covered with a black glove slammed against the wall, creating a sound like a steel rod being swung against a car window. The thick force made a large piece of the wall shatter and collapse, exposing the steel bars. His fist, however, was not injured. The leader's body trembled with fury. His anger was obvious. His subordinates trembled next to him and dared not move an inch. All the secret bases on the other 3 continents were being swept through by the Six Nations armies, incurring huge losses every day. The Germinal organization's base camp was located on the continent of Andrea. The secret bases on the other 3 continents were intended to be the beachheads to nail the enemy in future wars. So, the loss this time was equivalent to the organization's painstaking efforts for many years being destroyed. It had severely wounded the organization. 0. The leader took a deep breath into the unfathomable depths of his lungs. How much information does Han Xiao have? This was a question that the leader had always been suspicious about. He felt that Han Xiao was not in a position to be aware of key intelligence. He had once told the organization's hackers to check the program loopholes repeatedly, and there were no signs of hacking. He had also conducted multiple investigations on the top management. There were no traitors. Zero's source of information was really too suspicious. It was as though he was a prophet. In fact, the 4 bases that were lost, including the Dark Crow Valley base, were not of particular importance to the organization. Before the 4 secret bases were removed, the leader hesitated over whether or not to relocate other bases in southern continent, but he did not implement any action. It was not that he wanted to leave it to chance. He felt that moving other bases rashly would expose these locations and cause them to lose their secrecy. It was like abandoning the huge amount of upfront investment, wasting their finances and time. Perhaps, it was as Zero had mentioned, making a mountain out of a molehill. However, the situation made it clear that Zero had mastered the detailed information of the organization, far more so than he had expected. The Valkyrie experiment strengthens the brain, and awakens. Thinking of Han Xiao's performance, the leader felt as if there was a hint to the truth. Zero has awakened the ability to predict. No wonder he could get intelligence, escape from the lab, and avoid the tracking of the organization. The leader closed his eyes and anger brewed in his heart. He felt that this was the only possible explanation. Zero was a monster created by the Germinal organization, and all the organization could do was accept it. Regret. The leader did not allow himself to have this kind of emotion. There was no room for regret. This kind of character is too dangerous. If he is allowed to live, all the actions of the organization will be made known. He has to be killed. The pin-drop silence continued for 3 minutes. The leader's low, hoarse voice slowly sounded, and it spoke of deep savage intentions. Even though the Germinal organization's members in the room knew that the leader was not targeting them, it still sent a chill down their spine. Move all the bases in the 3 continents. There is no need to care about the loss and damage. Withdraw whatever can be withdrawn. Start the crisis plan hibernation project, and all activity is to be moved underground. All intelligence personnel are to thoroughly investigate Zero's tracks. Not a single clue is to be neglected. Before we find Zero, the full-scale war plan is to be delayed, indefinitely. Fall of the Germinal current progress 13.8%. At the gray metal base, Han Xiao lay on the sofa, sliding his fingers across the tablet and brushing through the information collected and organized on the dark net, almost all of which was related to the movements of the 6 nations. 2 months ago, he had provided intelligence to the 6 nations. Naturally, none of the 6 nations acted immediately. They first sent people to confirm the accuracy of the intelligence, then they secretly dispatched resources to prepare for the war. The military operation only became official 2 months later. The results were very gratifying. A large number of Germinal bases were removed. Yet, there were some secret bases that Han Xiao was not aware of. They were forces that had been preserved. Han Xiao's mission profile had increased exponentially. Although the increment was reduced, he was winning by volume. With the actions by the 6 nations, he was progressing every day. The Germinal organization was not a pig that would stretch out its neck dumbly to be slashed. They were determined to preserve their last breath by any means. They had evacuated all remaining bases and were trying to minimize losses. This was within Han Xiao's expectations. He was simply waiting to see how many battles the 6 countries could win next by chasing Germinal's trails hard. With the momentum now, my mission progress is estimated to be more than 20%. About 50% of the Germinal organization's bases in the 3 continents had been conquered, whilst their base camp on the Andria continent had only half its size left. The morale of the Germinal organization had been so badly hurt that it would not be able to declare war against the 6 nations in 3 months' time as per the original scenario. This had a far-reaching impact. One such impact was that the Germinal organization's sub-bases on the 3 continents had been removed, cutting off the channels for most players to join the organization. That meant that the players in Germinal's camp would be 90% less than originally. In Han Xiao's opinion, this was the biggest gain. Taking advantage of the chaos, I can also personally intercept and kill countless disoriented troops and improve my mission progress. Releasing information could only be done once, so Han Xiao was ready to make full use of this opportunity to strike against his enemy while it was at its weakest, hoping that his attacks would deal some serious damage and advance his level. The small butterfly effect he had set off was rolling up into a storm, causing a huge mess in the quest between the Six Nations and the Germinal organization. If one of the front-line events on planet Aquamarine was accidentally annihilated, the players on this planet would become idle and start to freely explore. Interesting. Han Xiao's face broke into a sinister smile. His 2-month killer career had earned him a lot of EXP. He had already unlocked Night Stalker, providing him skills such as stealth and steady aim. This sub-professional upgrade bonus had a slant toward agility. With this, Han Xiao's total level had reached LV40, and he was stuck at his advancement. The manner in which he completed his mission was a prerequisite for his next advancement. Second stage advancement, defeat 3 strong enemies beyond your level. Note, your opponent must be at least 5 levels higher than you. Current progress, 0%. Defeating a higher level opponent was a common requirement for class advancements. The difficulty was not high, and the player could compete in a team. This made it easier for Han Xiao. It was a pity that his previous such assassinations were not counted for his current task. As his level increased, higher level killing was becoming more and more difficult. With Han Xiao's level, he had to kill opponents beyond LV45 at the bare minimum to achieve the cross-level standard. Moreover, these LV45 opponents were already in the 3rd stage of planet Aquamarine's combat power, possessing ghostly powers. Because he was stuck at advancement and could not upgrade to the next level, Han Xiao was putting all his EXP into developing his skills. He had managed to improve his combat sniping skills. Before building a powerful machine that could become the core of his tactics, he was not going to change his strategy of using moving snipe for the time being. In addition, he had also incorporated new blueprints, improving his personal capability tremendously. In addition to becoming a legend in the list of killers, Han Xiao had also unexpectedly become a legend for a different reason. The legend of planet Aquamarine, the mysterious Zero. As a traitor of the Germinal organization, you have uprooted the solid foundations of the organization based on your sole effort. No one expected such a course of events. You have already become the arch-enemy of the Germinal organization. Perhaps you should protect your identity, as there are many people who are searching for you. The source of my legendary status comes from my intelligence that inflicted a great loss on the Germinal organization and caused planet Aquamarine to fall into a state of chaos. I think I figured out how to attain such legendary status. I guess I just have to disrupt the original quest of the camp, and that means to wreak havoc. I guess that is my strength. Han Xiao touched his chin in thought. His relationship with the Germinal organization had fallen to -3,000. He was becoming their arch-enemy. The relationship was unsalvageable. This hatred is really deep-seated. Han Xiao furrowed his brows. On the other hand, the gray metal base was also becoming better equipped. Han Xiao had upgraded the energy source on the base. There were already 8 assistant robots working hard. It was a stable source of EXP. The cost of manufacturing each assistant robot was about 200,000 EXP. Mechanics could create assistant-type robots, but few people did it in the early days because it was not cost-effective. These robots cost hundreds of thousands of EXP to develop, but they would only provide a few thousand XP each day. One could easily attain that by completing simple tasks. Moreover, these low-level intelligence robot assistants could only complete simple manufacturing tasks. If spare parts were needed, players could directly purchase them from the player market. Even unions were unwilling to use the assistant robot in their early stages. They had their production team and were in no shortage of manpower. Only when the mechanics learned how to manufacture intermediate-level smart chips to enable robots to perform more precise operations would these robot assistants gradually become the standard tools for mechanics. But for Han Xiao, money was not that important. He took a brief look at his darknet account and a bunch of zeros leaped into his eyes. All these were rewards that he had collected from completing various assassinations. Well, it seemed that there were some orders from Division 13. He had almost forgotten. Han Xiao looked at the interface, and it was the last 30 minutes before the public beta. This day has finally arrived. Over the past year, he had accumulated a huge amount of capital, way more than most. Han Xiao's eyes were beaming as he nestled in the sofa, waiting silently. The public beta countdown was counting down to the last minute. Looking at the Time Galaxy calendar, July 3, 688. Countdown. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1. The public beta is now open. Fetching data. Fetching data done. Player forum open. Open beta duration, 1271 days. Welcome to Galaxy 1.0 Adventurer. Chapter 125, What Have We Missed? Ever since Galaxy was in the research and development stage, the game had received wide attention with minimal marketing. Only basic information was provided on the official website. Even so, its popularity was continuously rising. Due to the many groundless rumors, Galaxy was shrouded with an air of mystery, fueling the players' anticipation and curiosity. On the day of public beta, the enthusiasm of the players was exploding like the eruption of a volcano. Although the number of VR capsules in the first batch was limited and there was also a restriction on the number of purchases, the game was sold out in half an hour. Those who did not manage to grab hold of the game were utterly disappointed, whereas those who did get it could not wait to enter the game. The day that the game was released, enthusiastic players rushed into the game. In Galaxy, there were dozens of players who came from different birthplaces, and this formed the first batch of players. In the evening, more and more public beta players who had created their characters appeared out of thin air in the forest outside the settlement of Bighorn Village, looking around curiously. "It feels so real," exclaimed a player as he jumped around with ease. "Quick! Look at the sky, there is actually more than one moon," a player shouted out in excitement as he admired the scenery. "Whoa, can I take off my pants?" asked a muddle-headed player. "Is there no novice village in this game?" Another player scratched his head, not knowing what to do. As more and more players appeared, a huge crowd began to form. With more than 1,000 people gathered, one could hardly see an end to the mass of players. There were thousands of players who had gathered. After some confusion, some observant players spotted the lights in the distance from Bighorn Village. Thinking that it was the novice village, the players rushed over en masse. The guards at the settlement of Bighorn Village were shocked to see the group of ragged men and immediately blew the whistle to inform the rest of the population to lock their doors and stop this huge group of foreigners from entering their settlement. The players were all stopped at the gate, and they started shouting out against the guards. "What is going on? Why isn't the novice village open? My hunger level is dropping, I will die if I don't eat something." The expressions of these NPCs are so lively. Within the settlement of Bighorn Village, all the residents walked out of their house holding torches and weapons, and stood guarding the main door solemnly, preventing the mass of people from attacking the place. The village chief, Xander, gathered the few key personnel urgently. "Where did this group of people come from? It's almost 10,000 people." Xander exclaimed. "Is it a group of migratory vagrants? Let's just ask directly." Xander climbed to the watchtower and asked loudly as he looked down at the huge crowd of players, "Friends from afar, why have you come to us?" The players looked at one another with confused faces, not knowing how to respond. Xander then shook his head. "If you all do not state where you are from, I cannot let you enter the settlement." The public beta players were baffled. They were all new players who could not even understand a map. How would they be able to tell him their origin? Was that a joke? Inside the settlement, the closed beta players found the whole situation amusing. It was like a show for them as they watched the situation unfold from the side. They had landed directly inside the settlement when they first arrived and did not have to go through the trouble that the public beta players who had landed outside the settlement had to face now. Just then, they received a notification. It was a mission where they had to convince Xander to allow the public beta players to enter the settlement, and the prize was rather significant. There was a note that specified they had to make sure that their use of words would match the current game context. Interesting, there are no other games like this. The players inside the settlement were surprised by the creativity in this game. They could actually use their convincing skills to influence the NPC in this game. That was new to them. After a few discussions, the closed beta players went up to Xander to start a discussion. After what seemed like a long time, Xander finally understood. "Do you all know the group of people outside?" One of the closed beta players answered with a straight face. "Yes, we used to be residents in the same settlement, called Earth Village. There was a disaster, and we lost all contact. This group of people outside are all as hardworking as us. Chief Xander, please accept them." Earth Village? Why haven't I heard of the settlement? After some thought, Xander seemed slightly convinced. There are too many of them. It is impossible to accept all of them. That is simple. All they need is a job, some food, and basic supplies. You can think of them as cheap labor, and it is also an opportunity to expand the settlement. The closed beta players snickered, as they could not wait for the public players to be scammed. Xander's eyes lit up. You are right. Soon enough, Xander explained the situation to the public beta players, and they all received a task each. The first job, you should earn some money through labor. Do not let yourself starve to death. Try to build a better relationship with our settlement so that you can be trusted. With guidance, the public beta players started their tasks. Residents of Bighorn Village Settlement eagerly provided different job opportunities, and the merchants also opened up their stores to the players, allowing them to use their own money to buy some food. With a clear goal to work toward, the public beta players started to have a good impression of Bighorn Village. The public beta players formed a ring of tents on the boundary of the settlement, adding on to the construction of the settlement. The same scene was happening for the newcomers at other settlements on planet Aquamarine. On the first day of the public beta, all the players were very excited, and they soon found out that there were camera and video functions, which added on to their excitement. The number of posts on social media exploded with players posting about the most minuscule of events. The following were some of the posts. Poor review. How can there be no excretion function? The owner of this post had ulterior motives, and he was obviously not really complaining about excretion. Taking on an alien body is so fun. Another post showed a picture of a Taurus male player shaking his tail. Almost got killed by a wild boar. It's so fun. The post showed a picture of a female player making a peace sign with a wild boar chasing right behind her. On the first day of the launch of the public beta, millions of players joined the game, and they were assigned to different planets, with at least around 100,000 players on each planet. As the news spread, the numbers rose at a rapid rate. With the next half a year, the numbers would likely snowball into tens of millions. The public beta players were overjoyed with the game while some of the closed beta players were not having it so well. In Dark Crow Valley, Jupiter and the other members of the guild looked at their surrounding forests with a blank look. All around them, the woods were green, the evening wind lightly caressed their skin, and the calm atmosphere was like a gentle palm, warming their hearts and making everything seem so harmonious. The view was amazing and pleasing to the eye. But where did the base go? Jupiter hesitated before he asked, the place we are going to, should be the base, right? Everyone nodded in unison. There is no longer a connection with the camp. Poseidon exclaimed. Everyone then checked their interface and realized that their original Dark Crow Valley base connection was gone. Everyone was flabbergasted. What is this situation? Quick! Check the tasks. Waking up from the trance, Jupiter checked his interface immediately, before heaving a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the mission is still there. OSH*T. In the next moment, everyone was shocked. Search for Zero, level A, 0, a mysterious traitor. He has caused the organization to suffer many losses. Find Zero, and you will become a great friend to the organization. The level of difficulty had changed from B to A. The task instructions had also changed, the location of Zero was no longer required as it was like finding a needle in a haystack. The Guild of Gods had made a lot of preparations, and the results of the discussion could fill up an entire blackboard. This change had caused all the preparation in the past few days to go to waste. What have we missed? Jupiter then thought of the official introduction of Galaxy and lost his voice. Don't tell me Zero is the main character on this planet. Chapter 126, What a Scam. What shall we do now? Poseidon asked. Let's go ask around. Jupiter and his group returned to Dark Crow Forest Town, and upon hearing from the villagers that Dark Crow Valley base had been destroyed by Star Dragon, they were shocked. After getting a rough idea of what had happened, they thought to themselves, how is it possible that the base could have disappeared just like that? Wow! Who knew this game would be so intense? Last week's efforts had all been wasted, and their advantages from the beta testing were almost all lost. Now that Dark Crow Valley base, the organization that had been issuing quests, was gone. Even if they completed the quest, they had no idea who to get their rewards from. Everyone looked at each other and cried in dismay. How could this actually happen? Jupiter felt terrible, but he was reluctant to give up on this grade A quest. The Germinal organization definitely won't just stop here. Let's go look for other bases. There should be a way for us to return to Germinal camp. In the western capital. In a blur of vision, Frenzied Sword realized that he had spawned in an alley that was not too far from the site where the beta testing had gone offline. Public testing has begun. Frenzied Sword was so excited. Finally, he no longer had to worry about the time limitation and could wholeheartedly follow Han Xiao. "My dear Xiao, I'm coming." Based on his memories, he found his way to Old Man Lu's repair shop. "Han Xiao? That kid left long ago without even a goodbye. Who knows where he went?" Old Man Lu gulped down a can of beer, and his tone was a little depressed. He secretly doubted if his granddaughter's charm had truly lost its effects. Upon hearing the news, Frenzied Swords was struck dumb. He bore a sluggish face and stood rooted to the ground. How could his master run away? What am I to do now? The forum's popularity continued to climb. Gamers from different planets shared their own rumors. There were some gamers who were purely focused on trying and reviewing new elements of the game, and all seemed to praise it highly, even calling it a new era of gaming with true-to-life experiences. It was merely a display background that was recently set, yet people were already fantasizing about it. It was a virtual game that was like no other. From the start to the end, there was only one world, so gamers all united in one place. There were different planets, which were equivalent to the different servers. Gamers very much looked forward to meeting fellow gamers from other planets. This was not just the case in China. Esports teams from other countries also flocked to Galaxy. Even though they did not communicate prior to this, among the esports powerhouses America, Korea, France, England, and so on all chose to develop themselves in their own planets. Planet Aquamarine was one of the base camps that gamers from China chose. However, this did not mean that all the gamers on Planet Aquamarine were from China. People from other countries could also choose to join Planet Aquamarine. There were leisure gamers, and there were also the European spies who came just to create trouble. Electrolux, a retired professional gamer of America's Key Club who did not achieve anything much in his career, joined the club's studio after retiring. He joined Planet Aquamarine with such an ulterior motive. Han Xiao was the only one who could recognize Electrolux. This scorpion was to become the first to rise up to the top 16 in the first professional league in the future, and in Planet Aquamarine's selection trial, the strongest 16 that were selected to represent Aquamarine were usually all Chinese. This was going to be the Chinese professional gamers base. Among the sea of Chinese one could easily spot the one American, Electrolux, who started the uproar with a swear word on the forum. The evil Chinese gamers all over the planet were out to kill him, but all ended up dead under Electrolux's knife. Although Electrolux had the American arrogance, his strength and vast resources gave him the courage to start in a random planet. His luck was good as well. In one of the Germinal organization's laboratories, Electrolux opened his eyes wide and found himself soaking in a light blue solution. He was in a vat of nutrition fluid and was surprised that he did not need to breathe. He looked through the glass and saw a scientist holding a tablet, recording scribbles on the outside. Realizing that he could not control his character for the time being, Electrolux waited patiently. According to his experience, this should be an intermission animation. After roughly a minute, a drainage hole appeared at the bottom of the nutrition tube, and the light blue solution disappeared. Electrolux could now move, and he saw a notification on the interface. You have been injected with DNA improvement solution. Your total attributes have increased by 3. You have acquired the skill DNA regulation. DNA regulation, you have a much higher chance of awakening Esper abilities, and the power will be increased by 10%. My God! Electrolux was overjoyed. Random openings are so awesome. The nutrition cabinet opened, and the scientists came crowding. Electrolux did not resist, allowing the scientist to pull him over to the golden platform to do various instrument tests. At this moment, Electrolux received another prompt. The DNA Improvement Program is a biological research program that helps to cultivate superpowers. The success rate is extremely low. And you, being one of the few successful tests, will be valued much by the Germinal organization. You can choose to stay or leave. Previously Electrolux had chosen to stay, and afterward, he had become Germinal organization's strongest player. He made a similar decision, for with such an amazing start, only a fool would leave. This skill is specially tailored for me. Electrolux had originally planned to become an Esper, and without saying another word, he entered a shop in the interface. Using the funds given by the club, he bought an ultra-perfect deluxe gene awakening elixir. He immediately chose the awakening option, and after a long and nervous wait, The interface prompted that he had successfully acquired the awakening ability. How smooth! Electrolux had a look of joy on his face. He felt like Lady Luck was shining upon him. He raised his palm, and his palm amassed a white whirlwind. The scientists rejoiced. Eureka! He's awakened. Electrolux knew that since he wanted to stay, it was best to show his potential. The scientist's reactions made him very satisfied. But the next moment he saw a scientist calling for the guards, leaving him puzzled. Why did he have to call the guards at such a nice moment? Germinal guards sped to the site, and without much effort, they handcuffed him. He was dumbfounded. Did they not say that they valued him? Why were they treating him like a prisoner? When he entered another laboratory, Electrolux was locked down onto the brainwashing device. It was only then that he realized something was wrong. What are you doing to me? The guard spoke in a chilled manner. We have orders from above that every successful test subject must be brainwashed 5 times over and then observed for another month before they can move freely. Electrolux was stunned. What logic is that? The reaction is simply too radical. He really was clueless. The original DNA improvement program did not need brainwashing. His random start was started by a European, and it was all benefits and no harm. However, after their experience with Han Xiao, the Germinal organization had implemented an extremely strict policy. They would rather kill than release, and no matter the research plan, the test subject was to be brainwashed and put under close observation for a month. Little did Electrolux know that this was all because of Han Xiao. It was too late to regret, for he was soon to be brainwashed. You are not exempt from the brainwashing. You have joined the Germinal organization under a special condition. As you have been brainwashed, you are unable to rebel against the Germinal organization. Electrolux panicked. Being unable to rebel meant that he was unable to escape the 1 month of imprisonment, which meant a month of being locked up, not to mention leveling up. This would mean he would be much behind other gamers. Which part of being valued is this? What a lie. He had clearly attained the ultimate awakening skill, yet he was stuck in this rot hole and had to suffer a month of being locked down and gaining no experience. It was a perfect start, but now he was to fall behind all the other gamers. Electrolux exploded internally. Chapter 127, The Fangs of Capitalism. The golden rays of dawn were shining in the sky. It was a cool and refreshing morning. Whilst driving a truck, Han Xiao made his way toward Big Horn Mountain. He had based his directions off a radar. Despite him driving all night, he was not tired at all. In fact, he was alert as he had pulled over to nap the night before. The public beta had started a few days ago, yet the forum was already buzzing with comments. Han Xiao specially took notice of Planet Aquamarine's forum, and through the tags of the players, he managed to understand the situation of each and every newcomer. He had always wanted to join in the commotion. The best chance to interact was when the players made their first appearance. Just a few days back, Han Xiao had used his authority to obtain a tip-off from the dark web there was a batch of newcomers in Big Horn Village. Hence, Han Xiao decided to advance toward Big Horn Village to make use of them. In the distance from Big Horn Village, one could see the silhouette of the settlements. Han Xiao could tell with one glance that the settlement was filled with countless tents, just like a refugee camp. A swarm of players could also be seen busy bustling about. The moment Han Xiao parked his truck, he caught the attention of the players. With a cigarette dangling from his lips, Han Xiao got out from his truck and leaned against it while puffing out a cloud of smoke. He put on an air of arrogance, misleading the players to think that he was an important character. A deep understanding of players' mentality was Han Xiao's specialty. He had analyzed the situation. With the new game being released, all the players were thrilled. No matter what kind of tasks were given to them, they were all willing to try. This was known as the hunger stage, and since there was an overwhelming number of new players, there would definitely be a few players who could not obtain any missions. Therefore, Han Xiao knew that as an advanced player character, he was influential. All he had to do was appear in front of the players, and he could definitely rile up the players. The players were all new and did not have skills yet. However, he could benefit from their large number. Han Xiao also happened to have a way to reap benefits from these newcomers, and he could take this opportunity to further test the functions on the NPC interface. In Han Xiao's eyes, the players who were walking about resembled walking wallets. After a while, the players were finally starting to get curious and some walked over. Black Phantom, Unknown, Yellow name. Rank, unknown. Attributes, unknown. Risk level, extremely deadly. What the heck? This is a high-level NPC. This is the first time that I've seen one. Why is there such a high-level player in a novice village? Is he the boss? Doesn't seem like it though. It looks like we can trigger a mission. The surrounding players were full of astonishment and were hesitating whether they should approach Han Xiao. Han Xiao raised an eyebrow. He was now at LV40, which was 30 levels higher than all the other players. This time around, he was fully aware of the players' abilities. Hence, he cleared his throat and said, "You all seem to be a capable bunch of people, and I do need some help at the moment." After making his statement, Han Xiao sent out the missions that he had prepared earlier on. The dozen players received their missions. Mysterious stranger, you have encountered a mysterious NPC, and he seems to have some work for you. Try to please him as much as possible, and you might receive unexpected surprises. The mission was to collect a plant known as snake venom. These players realized that the reward given was more generous than the novice tasks that they had received in Bighorn Village. It was reaching up to 1000 EXP. Thus, the players received their missions excitedly. Snake venom was a relatively common plant. This plant could be collected near Bighorn Village, and it was also sold in the settlement to make poisoned arrows. At this moment, many players could not afford firearms. Instead, they used cold weapons. Han Xiao set up this mission for the sole purpose of experimenting as well as to allow his subsequent activities to not be suspected. The limit of my missions now is much higher than before, it has reached D level. With that thought in mind, Han Xiao opened the interface, and the detailed numbers appeared. Highest reward limit, 36,940. Level 40, plus 12,000, advancement level limit plus 300. Rank D, plus 10,000. Camps. Germinal, enemy minus 3,000. Division 13, friendly 2,130. Blood Pack Society, respect 3,950. The Rothschild family, friendly 1,300. Farian Company, friendly 1,200. Universal reputation. Black Phantom, Aquamarine, plus 5%. Mysterious Zero, Aquamarine, plus 5%. The bonuses from his universal reputation was a 10% on his current limit. Different regions had different universal reputation bonuses, but usually, the bonus from one universal reputation was 5%. In addition, the bigger the area, the higher the bonus. The main objective of the universal reputation was for the daily limit. One universal reputation resulted in double the limit, and originally, his limit was a 5 times addition. Now, it was at 7 times the original limit, nearing 26,000 experience points. The players who had not received any missions huddled together and were quietly discussing among themselves while looking at Han Xiao curiously. This is the high-level NPC. It feels like he's no different from us. Black Phantom does sound very old-fashioned. I wonder which profession he is from. It might not have been mentioned before, but most of public players' profession was Esper. The other 4 schools of players required basic knowledge to change their profession, but Esper was capable of many things. Of course, even though their abilities were strange, none of the players had the ability to use them. Espers required a huge amount of energy, and it was dependent on the players' current levels. They were simply unable to use their powers and hence appeared very weak. The players were at most able to exert their power for around 10 seconds, which meant that the players were weak and vulnerable. Not long after, the players who had completed their mission were returning with a bunch of snake venom. Their faces were filled with excitement. Once Han Xiao realized that there were enough onlookers, his eyes flashed. "I will stay here for a few days. I can provide some weapons for you should you need them." Han Xiao then opened a window containing goods that he could sell to the players. He had only set up a few types of weapons, foldable machete, ordinary pistols, and submachine guns. He did not sell other machinery as he knew that the novice players did not have that much money, but he was selling many types of ammunition and special ammunition. However, Han Xiao also had a powerful setup called lightweight mechanical arm, the price of which was so steep that the players were unable to afford. It was actually bait that was as effective as hanging a carrot in front of a donkey. Offering the lightweight mechanical arm meant nothing to him as it was useless to him because of 2 main reasons. Firstly, the equipment did not match his capability, and secondly, it was not a rare product to begin with. It was just introductory machinery, and since it would be developed by other mechanics in the future, it was better to release this machinery now to earn short-term profit. One issue was that the foldable machete and lightweight mechanical arm that Han Xiao had created in Star Dragon seemed to have a risk of being exposed, but Han Xiao was not too concerned as Star Dragon and him were not enemies. Furthermore, his own whereabouts were erratic. Even if his identity became known, it did not matter as the circulation of information between the players and the organizations was very slow. Hence, his sale of this machinery in a short period of time would not pose any problem. The profits from the players' market was too awesome for him to give up, whereas in the future, once I'm stronger, there will be absolutely no need to continue hiding my identity. Not to mention Han Xiao's psychological activities, but all the players who saw the equipment put out for sale were shocked. This is the mysterious businessman. Lightweight mechanical arm. Oh my god, this is an artifact. This machinery costs $20,000. This is way too expensive, who can even afford it? Besides, it requires 25 points of strength to use it. I think you would need to be LV10 at least to reach this attribute. Those firearms are cheap though. They only cost $1,500 for one. The player then called their friends and flocked over, eager to have a look. Han Xiao was surrounded by them in an instant. The novice players were attracted to the firearms like a moth to a flame. Since they are using cold weapons now, it would require a dozen people to even defeat a weak beast. Not only were Bighorn Village's firearms expensive, they needed money for the ammunition too. The novice players simply could not afford it. The cost of Han Xiao making a pistol was only about 800 aqua coins, and the selling price was twice the cost price. He was considered kind because his price was affordable. He doubted that anyone could find a cheaper pistol than his. Furthermore, Han Xiao's pistols were of great quality. It was not as if he was trying to cheat the players' money by offering inferior quality pistols. Because there were limited firearms, the players rushed to make a purchase. Those who managed to get their hands on the guns were exhilarated, while those who did not manage to get one were disappointed. The closed beta players had also squeezed in with the crowd. Slice You Up, who had killed the World Guild's leader, bought a pistol from Han Xiao and realized that the quality was much better than the gun sold in Bighorn Village. How regretful he was. Had he known earlier, he would not have bought his weapons from Bighorn Village. Having sold all his weapons in the truck, Han Xiao earned $30,000 in that short period of time. Yes, the players' funds were limited, but there were at least 10,000 players in Bighorn Village alone, which meant the combined purchases were earning Han Xiao big bucks. After selling the firearms, Han Xiao could use the cargo compartment in the truck to manufacture new firearms and ammunition. The real profits from selling firearms were the sales from ammunition. Having bought the firearms, the players would have to buy ammunition as well. This was known as bundled sales, where one product generated the demand of the other because they had to be bought together. This was also what Han Xiao had realized previously when he had bought instant noodles without the seasoning from the shop downstairs. The players loved their newly bought guns so much that they refused to put them down. Some were shooting at trees far away. The recoil strength was so strong that the players' wrists shook, and the bullets flew aimlessly. Those who had no shooting skills were unable to unleash the gun's power fully. A lot of the players realized they had this problem, and their excitement slowly turned to distress. This was what Han Xiao had been anticipating. Now he could offer his after-sales service. Han Xiao smiled to himself and set up a window for shooting lessons. This time round, he did not announce it to the players. He said it in a way that to learn from him, the players would have to have a reputation of 5 points. The players discovered the service almost immediately. We can actually learn skills from Black Phantom. Oh my, there are so many abilities to learn. We need 5 reputation points to learn though. How do we increase our reputation? I just discovered how, for every $500 spent, your reputation with Black Phantom will increase by 1. It is still too expensive. The players only had $1,000 with them now, and they had accumulated this from completing missions. Han Xiao had a deep understanding of their financial status as he was, after all, once a novice player. This move was to enable the players to feel that learning a skill was not easy. Humans are as such, they would not appreciate things that were given easily. Only when they are unable to obtain something instantly would they feel the need to upgrade themselves to get what they desired. In this case, once an ordinary player and a character developed a good relationship, it would also increase their reputation with the NPC. Of course, Master Han's main purpose was to also rake in a large sum of money from the players. If I don't earn the players' hard-earned money, am I still human? To continuously create demand from his customers and force them to buy products was a tactic used by businessmen. Han Xiao touched his chin and mused, oh, if only I had gone into business instead. Chapter 128, All Linked. The players were hesitant, but Han Xiao was not at all worried. There would be someone who eventually decided to start eating the crab first. Just as he expected, a cute girl with the ID Maple Moon finally decided to do it. After she spent enough money in the shop, Han Xiao immediately raised the reputation of this player by 5 points. After which, he suddenly realized that Maple Moon was someone familiar. Maple Moon was shocked as she looked at the list of skills that could be learned. I can actually learn the basic knowledge required for class advancement. The moment she said those words, players began to chatter, and their level of excitement went through the roof. Besides tycoons and those who were willing to spend a lot of cash in this game, most of the ordinary players had experienced problems with advancing as they still did not know to obtain the basic knowledge required. This mysterious NPC Black Phantom was willing to sell basic knowledge. Players who were initially hesitant instantly made up their minds and were determined to raise their reputation with Black Phantom to 5 points. They were not willing to let such a good opportunity slip by. You have taught basic assembly. You have obtained 1000 EXP and 200 aquamarine dollars. Indeed, compared to the beta testing phase, Han Xiao doubled the price of the basic knowledge, yet players were still highly enthusiastic to learn it. Although he would only gain 1000 EXP every time the knowledge had been learned, the total amount would accumulate quickly with so many players here wanting to get the knowledge. Originally, for aquamarine players to advance, the most common way was to join a camp. It was rare for players to obtain the basic knowledge before joining a camp. By joining a camp and performing quests to get connections, players would be able to exchange their reputation points for basic knowledge. Of course, players could choose to purchase with cash, but it was not worth it. Han Xiao's action had saved many players from this trouble, and at the same time, it quickened their progress. In a short while, hundreds of players had learned the basic knowledge. This meant that Han Xiao obtained hundreds of thousands of experience points. This number was still quickly climbing. With his business booming, Han Xiao was like Zhang Taigong one, calmly waiting for fish to fall for the bait. While entertaining the players, he was casually scrolling through the forum. All the players from the new planets were sharing this information. Players from Bighorn Village were all enthusiastically advertising Han Xiao on the forum. He was the first high-ranking character in all the new planets that ever appeared in the novice villages, therefore, he quickly gained popularity. Many posts about him kept being bumped up in the forum. This high-ranking character sells inexpensive firearms and ammunition with excellent quality. Basic knowledge can be learned from him if the reputation is raised to at least 5 points. Other than common skills like basic shooting and other basic combat skills, a lot of mechanical knowledge can also be learned. Mechanic players can immediately go for their class advancement by learning the basic knowledge from him. Whoa! I haven't seen such a high-ranked character before. Even class advancement knowledge can be learned. Bighorn Village. I'll go over right now. Damn, I'm on another planet, I can't go over at all. Why has such a high-ranked character not been seen anywhere else? Danger level, fatal. Any brave souls want to test out his power? If you die, I will pay you. I am not that rich, so I can only give an airplane for compensation. Many posts were also accompanied by images. The appearance of Han Xiao, who was in black, achieved a huge on-screen success. Many people were greatly impressed by his outfit, which included a black windbreaker and a pair of black gloves. He appeared both cool and handsome, and as long as his face was not shown, he could definitely be a male model. Even players from the other beginner planets were discussing his combat strength enthusiastically. The forum had an automatic translation function, so there was no need to worry about language barriers. Players are really interested in the combat power of this high-ranked character. An idea suddenly ran through Han Xiao's mind, and he thought that if he could show off his skills, he might be able to attract more people to advance as mechanics. Even though he was willing to share his basic knowledge, many people were still on the fence. After all, there were quite a few players that were not really interested in the path of a mechanic and were doubtful about their combat strength. Naturally, Pugilist and Esper were more fun to play, and therefore, more appealing to most players. Indeed, They were right in their suspicion. Mechanics were not as strong in the earlier stages. However, this rule did not apply to Han Xiao. He smirked and decided to mislead the players. He understood the psychology of these players too well and knew that many would simply join whichever class they thought was the most powerful. To Han Xiao, teaching the basic knowledge was an excellent way of earning profits. There were already hundreds of players who had acquired the mechanics' basic knowledge. If he was able to trick half of the players from Bighorn Village into becoming mechanics, then he would easily obtain millions of EXP. The profit in this market would be almost unbelievable. Han Xiao was exuberant. Just in time. The troops from the Germinal organization will be arriving in a few days. This is a good time to carry out the plan. In the western capital, Frenzied Sword felt exasperated. In the last few days, he had no appetite for anything. Days without Han Xiao were like a day without sunshine. Each passing day was torture. As Frenzied Sword randomly scrolled through the forum, he came across a bunch of posts by the players from Bighorn Village. The posts were about Han Xiao and the goods that he was selling. Lightweight mechanical arm. With a look of pleasant surprise, Frenzied Sword stood up suddenly. He remembered that Han Xiao had previously exhibited this mechanical arm. Han Xiao was, too, always wearing a mask. As such, Frenzied Sword hazarded a guess. Could Black Phantom be Han Xiao? I have to find him. In order to raise the reputation with Han Xiao to more than 5 points, many players had moved to the assembly point at Bighorn Village to do the quests and earn money. As such, the number of players surrounding Han Xiao increased significantly. Your product lightweight mechanical arm has been sold. Han Xiao was shocked. He had previously set the high price of 20,000 for this item, yet someone was able to afford it. He surveyed the surrounding players and found their leader. His ID was Jade Green Sky. The moment Han Xiao saw this name, he was immediately enlightened. Jade Green Sky was the chairperson of a guild named Sky Territory, and with the wealth of the guild, he would naturally be able to afford the item. Jade Green Sky was wearing a set of hand-sewn leather armor, and his equipment was at least a grade better than the open beta players. That was because he was a closed beta test player. During closed beta testing, he had brought some of the core members with him to explore the other places on the map. Through the mouths of the other open beta players from his guild, he learned about Black Phantom, and he quickly brought the core members back to the village. Even though Jade Green Sky had yet to advance in his class, he was preparing to be a pugilist. He was immediately drawn to the stats of the lightweight mechanical arm. Although he was unable to equip the item as of now, he decided to purchase it first and keep it in his storage, just in case Black Phantom disappeared suddenly and the opportunity was lost. There are quite a lot of good items. Members of the Sky Territory Guild muttered praise as they browsed through the list of items. Unfortunately, in order to raise the reputation to 5 points, each member of the guild would have to spend $2,500. Despite being a large guild, the money that Sky Territory had was limited. The purchase of the lightweight mechanical had used up the majority of the guild's cash. Out of a blue, Han Xiao spoke. There will be a troop from the Germinal organization passing by here in a few days, and I need some people to help me set up the traps in the forest. Are you free to do so? With that, he set a quest and released it. E-level difficulty. The description was set up any kind of trap in the forest, and you will gain 500 EXP. Additionally, Han Xiao offered 3 reputation points as part of the reward, just what the Sky Territory Guild wanted. Jade Green Sky responded decisively. Everyone, accept this task. Han Xiao smiled to himself silently. By luring players to complete his quest using reputation points, he could both complete his quest and gain more business. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. He could arbitrarily attribute the reputation points with a certain value. This method was like the theory behind paper currency, whereby something was made to appear valuable, but in actual fact, it was worthless. This could be effective in attracting the Sky Territory Guild, Destroyer Guild, any guild's players into picking up the quest. Han Xiao had always felt that the currency system was built on a bubble. With this thought in mind, he would spend any cash he earned. Unspent money could become a hindrance to one's motivation to work. Most of the players went into the forest to set up traps. The traps that they could use were the more elementary ones. They were monster traps. Han Xiao took some time off and visited the forest. The forest was so full of traps that anyone with claustrophobia would have been triggered and covered with goosebumps instantly. The retreating troops from the Germinal organization would definitely be horrified when they entered the forest. The monster traps that the players had set were very much useless and were mainly to attract attention. Han Xiao set up some other traps by himself, and those traps were the ones that would be the deadliest. Chapter 129, Uproar in the Esports Circle. There were 4 continents on planet Aquamarine and many more assembly points for novice players. There was a perennial stream of new players joining the open beta, so the total number of players kept increasing. However, compared to the entire population of the planet, it was still an insignificant number. The players were all doing beginner quests and advancing slowly. They mostly camped in the areas around the novice villages. The players in Bighorn Village had been envied by many since they encountered a high-rank character, Han Xiao, who could teach them basic knowledge, whereas the players in other novice villages could only advance slowly through grinding for the secondary class. Generally, players could be divided into 3 types: casual players, studio players, and professional esports players. On the forum, there was a live broadcast. A godly player from the Deluxe Sanctuary Club, who was ranked 2nd in the country's esports field and 21st in the world, had officially announced that he would join Galaxy. His ID was Song. The number of viewers had already reached millions, and yet, it was still rising rapidly. Song, may I ask if your work from now on would be entirely focused on Galaxy? May I know why you only chose to join during the open beta phase? May I know? Even when he was bombarded by questions from reporters, Song remained calm and charismatic, and he answered each and every question elegantly. He was a handsome young man who always wore a mesmerizing smile. Due to his excellent skills and dashing looks, Song had gained a huge fan base. Galaxy is the game of the century with unparalleled potential. It has countless possibilities, vast maps, and an incredible amount of freedom. From my personal point of view, I believe that Galaxy will become a phenomenal game. The World Esports Association has already begun to prepare the first league for Galaxy, and it will be on a worldwide scale. Not only me, but all Chinese players will participate in this grand event to compete with players from America, France, Korea, and other great esports countries, aiming to win glory for our country. Yesterday, major America guilds like Qi, Devil, and Thunder Snake also announced their entry into Galaxy. They chose the in-game planet with the greatest potential, Planet Winterfrost, to be their base camp. They will become tough opponents in the future. Our guild also contacted major esports clubs such as Long Sky and Thunderstorm to invite them to join the game. We, as a nation, will definitely not lag behind in this game. Do you have any comments on the issue where your old nemesis, Lost Angel, claimed that he is going to defeat you in Galaxy? One reporter asked. Song chuckled before he spoke with a strong sense of self-confidence. I will never be afraid of any enemy. I will be the best in Galaxy and lead the Chinese players to defeat every player from other countries. This conference was like a signal that hinted the rise of Galaxy. Its influence soared immediately after the conference. The entire esports field roared, and countless professional players announced their plans to enter the game. With the arrangement of their respective clubs, players such as Sleepy Winter, Twinkle Fried Rice, and Rainy Kim, who joined the game during the closed beta phase, also held a press conference. This further fanned the enthusiasm in the esports field. The topic of the game became more and more popular, and the activity in the game forum was at a phenomenal level. Countless players were also looking forward to the sales of the second batch of VR capsules. Just as the popularity of the game soared, Galaxy released its first official trailer. The trailer showed the different landscapes of the novice planets as if it was a documentary film. The different styles and appearances of the planets, coupled with magic and technology from both ancient times and the future, attracted countless eyes. This trailer was made from the collection of closed beta players' clips, and they were all recorded from their point of view. This trailer introduced the background and the environment of the world of Galaxy through moving images. Soon, Galaxy would release other similar publicity videos to introduce other aspects of Galaxy. They announced that the next video would show the battle scenes of different classes, giving players a greater insight into the variations of different classes and their fighting styles. Many were eager to watch this video. The activity level of the forum was constantly through the roof, and Han Xiao kept an eye on the trends on the forum. Seeing the IDs of many professional players whom he had previously battled in his last life, Han Xiao felt a little emotional. He could still remember the times in his past life when he was an enthusiastic new player in the game. After many years, he had become a highly experienced professional power leveler in the game, and then he was transmigrated. Things had changed so much for him indeed, reality was more dramatic than a novel. In his last life, he had been among the players who bought the second batch of VR capsules. Han Xiao was curious if there was another version of him in this world, which was why he always paid attention to the forum for any evidence of it. Han Xiao had stayed at Bighorn Village for the past few days, and during this time, there had been old players constantly visiting the village and new players been born here. A group of curious new players who had just arrived gathered outside Bighorn Village. Their faces were full of curiosity. This is the novice village, right? A player with a pistol around his waist walked past, and he immediately caught the attention of those new players. Bro, where did you buy that gun? Oh, you must be newbies. You asked the right guy for this. A word of advice, never head to Bighorn Village to purchase a gun. Go straight west. There is a high-ranking character called Black Phantom who not only sells guns at a really affordable price but can also help you with class advancements, the player with the pistol said. Really? Let's go take a look now, the newbies exclaimed as their eyes lit brightly. Go on, do not forget to thank me. The player with the pistol had a look of pride plastered on his face. More and more players came to find Han Xiao the moment they arrived in the game before heading to Bighorn Village to receive quests. They then used all their hard-earned money from the quests to buy more items from Han Xiao to earn reputation points. They were just like hard-working bees, promptly supplying Han Xiao with a large amount of money. In just a few days, Han Xiao had earned more than 500,000 aquamarine dollars and close to 1 million EXP. Such efficiency was unparalleled. It was also a much safer and more convenient way for him compared to earning money and EXP by doing quests himself. The players now are all only newbies. Now is the best time to exploit them. The features of an NPC offered him a tremendous advantage when facing players, but Han Xiao knew there was a prerequisite to extracting profits from them. He had to be ahead of players in all areas of advancement. Although the current situation is really good, I cannot relax and stagnate, Han Xiao thought to himself as he took a puff of his cigarette. Among the players in Bighorn Village, around 20% had chosen to switch to become mechanics while the other players were still on the fence. Only by showing off the combat strength of a mechanic would the other players start to budge. Han Xiao glanced at the computer and read the intelligence passed from the darknet about the Germinal organization. The retreating troops would be passing by Bighorn Village this afternoon. As he was in the process of thinking, he heard a female voice. Black Phantom, why do you want to be enemy with the Germinal organization? Han Xiao turned his head and saw a petite young female player. She was below his chin and had delicate short hair and watery eyes full of curiosity. Her face was just like an apple, which made people want to poke her cheeks. Her ID was Maple Moon. She was the first female player who learned skills from him. I can't believe we've met again. Han Xiao raised his eyebrow as old memories started appearing in his head. Maple Moon, one of the mechanic representatives in the third season, was originally a casual player. She became extraordinary in the third season competition and was then signed by a club to become a professional player. In his past life, it was revealed on the forum that Maple Moon liked to dig into hidden story plots, and all the benefits she gained from doing so accumulated and compounded until the third season where it was advantageous for a mechanic. It was only then that she really showed her true combat prowess. Han Xiao blinked and had a new idea. Players like this seem to be able to. Chapter 130, The First Step in Building a Large Network. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Based on the quests that Han Xiao assigned to the players, Maple Moon had guessed that Han Xiao and the Germinal organization were enemies. Most players would just want to complete the task and get it over with, so they would not even bother with understanding any background information about the quest. However, Maple Moon enjoyed exploring the story plot and became curious about the background story of Han Xiao. Black Phantom, this name made her think of all sorts of assassins and stories of vengeance. She believed that there was something she could dig further into. She is the first player to interact with me outside of assigning quests and selling equipment. Han Xiao's eyes lit up. Han Xiao pondered about his relationship with the players and concluded that they were not enemies except for the players who took on missions that targeted him. He was able to not only extract profits from players but also train players with potential and let them become his allies. By exchanging help and resources, he could make these players willingly fight alongside him. As the players could resurrect, it was somewhat unfavorable to Han Xiao. However, looking from another perspective, it also meant that the players were best used as fighters and cannon fodder. Although most players did not have principles, and therefore, Using players in such a manner could be rather chaotic. Han Xiao was clear about the players' psychology and what motivated them. As long as he manipulated them properly, he could control the players' actions to a certain extent. If he made good use of this strategy, he could gain a huge advantage when fighting against NPC forces. The advantage could be as big as his advantage when interacting with players. What's this called again? Timing. Nah, it should be called focusing on both sides. A flash of thought sprinted through Han Xiao's mind as he glanced at her. He then suddenly walked up to the vehicle. Maple Moon was startled momentarily before she followed. The vehicle storage compartment was a workshop full of spare mechanical components. Han Xiao casually pointed his finger to ask Maple Moon to sit wherever she wanted. He then lit a cigarette and began smoking. The smoke created a mysterious atmosphere, and Maple Moon, upon seeing this scene, knew immediately that something exciting was about to happen to her. This caused her heartbeat to thump rapidly. She was very expectant. Han Xiao flicked the ashes off his cigarette as he said, "The Germinal organization is an evil organization that is using the grief the people who lost their country to manipulate them into fighting for their personal gains. They outlandishly try to start a world war and add more scars to this world that is already covered in wounds." Han Xiao embellished the story with many details of the evil deeds that the Germinal organization had previously committed, but he did not twist any facts around. The Germinal organization had indeed committed a lot of bloody acts. Han Xiao was able to know all this based on the memories from his past life and by reading the relevant case files on the dark net. He gave a good account of all these incidents to Maple Moon. As Maple Moon listened to Han Xiao attentively, her emotions fluctuated up and down. Her impression of the Germinal organization plummeted as she felt the anger brewing within her. Maple Moon was the kind of person who would get emotional from the storyline of a game, and she would always make decisions based on what her heart wanted. She had never been motivated by personal gains. There were actually a lot of players like Maple Moon since most players were there to enjoy the game. A game was a story that people could easily immerse themselves in. However, most of such players were playing offline games, so it was rare to find players like this in an online game. Han Xiao, in fact, found players like Maple Moon admirable. He coughed and asked a question that was clearly leading to a quest. Would you be willing to become an enemy of the Germinal organization? It was basically a yes or no question. Maple Moon nodded solemnly. Your reputation with Black Phantom has increased by 5 points. After adjusting her reputation points, Han Xiao took out a mobile phone and handed it to Maple Moon. Good, I have seen your courage. When you have grown stronger, contact me using this phone. You received the quest Black Phantom's invitation. Reach LV20. Then contact Black Phantom. Maple Moon was secretly delighted by her correct choice. She was right, there were hidden plots that could be triggered. Han Xiao secretly chuckled as he saw Maple Moon's delighted face. He was planning to spread a wide net to catch all these players with good potential. However, due to the limited number of players he could train, choosing each player carefully was a very important thing. Maple Moon would be a famous mechanic in the future and could be a good assistant for him. She was definitely a good spare tire. Cough. I mean an alternative. As for the remaining candidates, Han Xiao had to think hard about them. He was prepared to choose the players who had good principles and potential. As long as Han Xiao showed players that they could trigger hidden missions from him, the rest of the professional players would automatically come to find him by themselves, and this would allow him to have more choices in picking the candidates. A rough plan was generated inside Han Xiao's mind, and he believed that it was rather actionable, but for the time being, the players still required a period of growth before he could proceed to the next step of his plan. After he sent away the excited Maple Moon, he waited till noon before creating a new quest for the players. Hunting Germinal, follow Black Phantom to attack a troop from the Germinal organization. This quest is a prize pool mission, and the base reward is 35,000 EXP. 500 EXP will be consumed by accepting the quest and be placed in the reward pool. The total reward will be split proportionally among the top 5 players, or teams. Han Xiao had the ability to release different kinds of quests including a prize pool mission. Unfortunately, the reward he could dispense for a prize pool mission would still depend on the upper limit of a single mission. However, as the players were mostly around the level of 4 or 5, 35,000 was still an astronomical number to them. The players wanting to join the prize pool mission had to pay an admission fee. Han Xiao tried and realized that he could not manipulate the EXP that the players put into the prize pool. He felt bummed, like he had lost another way to earn scam the noobs. The Kill All Guild was the first to discover the prize pool mission. They were shocked by the sheer size of the reward for the quest. This must be the first prize pool mission. Oh whoa. 35,000 EXP. Even for the base reward, it is way too much. The quests that I can do now only give me a few hundred EXP. If more players accept this quest, the prize pool will accumulate to an astronomical number. All the members from the Kill All Guild could not contain their excitement. Sliceup's eyes flashed, and he had a different thought. No, we cannot allow other players to accept this quest. Members of the guild were shocked and asked the president, why not? Slicer 18 spoke volubly, only 5 players or teams can receive the prize for this quest. The Bighorn village has few 100,000 players, which even include some professional players. Rather than competing with all of them and rely on luck, why not just get the 35,000 EXP into our hand? If we are the only ones to accept the quest, we can easily manipulate the ranking and distribute the reward without the rest of our guild. Also, if we only win the quest as a team, each member will only gain an insubstantial amount of EXP. If we can distribute the EXP to a few individuals, it will be a lot more useful. He wanted to get several core members to complete the task and earn a huge amount of EXP. It was basically transferring the EXP that other members of the guild would gain to an elite few. If everyone in the guild were to gain the EXP, each person would only average about 500 EXP, which was insignificant. However, if the EXP were to be transferred to just a few members, their growth would be greatly accelerated. The guild members looked at each other in consternation. Although they were reluctant, they did not want to lose their job. It was only a little EXP, it would not matter that much. So, everyone agreed. The quest only starts in the afternoon, and Black Phantom will definitely set out in advance. As long as we do not let any players come into contact with him during these 2 hours, we are set. Sliceup ordered his guild members to hold up pistols and guard the area around Han Xiao. He then gave an order. Warn any person that's coming near him. If anyone defies the warning, fire immediately. The Kill All Guild had more than 20 core members located within Bighorn Village and more than 100 secondary members. It was the biggest player faction at the moment. These guilds working in a studio were different from casual players. They had a presence in many games, and only when they were certain that a particular game was valuable enough to have a great investment in would they then move their members based in other games into that specific game. The Kill All Guild had a few thousand members, but there were only about 100 of them based in Galaxy. More players from the guild would join the game when more VR capsules were on sale. Players in this game could kill each other. However, the more people they killed, the more sin points they would accumulate. The amount of EXP and equipment that a player would drop for dying was proportional to their sin points. Han Xiao realized that there was a group of guild players around him chasing the other players away, preventing anyone from getting close to him. They were rather aggressive and stern. Those that got driven away were afraid to speak up. He pondered for a moment and immediately understood what the Kill All Guild was trying to do. His face turned black. This guild trying to swallow my prize pool mission alone, how fearless. His original intention of the prize pool mission was to get more players to join in and become his cannon fodder, but the Kill All Guild was now interfering his plan. A large group of players gathered on the side. They were indignant. They are too authoritative. I just want to buy some ammunition, that's all. What right do you have to forcibly occupy Black Phantom? At this moment, members of the Sky Territory Guild forced their way through the crowd and confronted the Kill All Guild. Jade Green Sky then shouted, "What are you guys trying to do?" Sliceup was expressionless. He did not even bother to explain before he gestured with his hand. His members around him immediately aimed their pistol at Jade Green Sky. This immediately triggered the members of the Sky Territory Guild. They responded in kind. All the other players were slightly shocked by the scene. They quickly moved backward, lest they got splashed with blood. Jade Green Sky was hesitant. He had fewer people on his side, so he knew that he would be at a disadvantage once the battle began. He did not understand why the Kill All Guild suddenly became so authoritative, but he was certain that something fishy was going on. Furthermore, with so many eyes around observing them, the Sky Territory Guild could not act like cowards. Jade Green Sky and his members glanced at each other, confirming each other's thoughts. Fight. Tension was building on both sides. Other players stretched their necks to watch the show. Too big, famous guilds fighting against each other was not an everyday occurrence. The battle was on the verge of starting. Just then, Every member in the Kill All Guild received a notification on their interface. Your reputation with Black Phantom decreased by 10 points. Current reputation, -5. Current relationship, cold. Slice You Up was astonished. Chapter 131, Bloodshed. Oh my. What's the matter? How did my reputation drop? Players from the Kill All Guild were all confused. They immediately turned back to look at Han Xiao, only to find him looking in their direction with a look of indifference. This time around, no matter how thick-headed they were, they could figure what was going on. They observed curiously and suspiciously from the side. Slice You Up was extremely troubled. How was he to know that such actions would cause Black Phantom's unhappiness? Wasn't it normal for guilds to hoard resources in the game? Why was this NPC so intelligent? The reputation earned these few days was all gone, and it even dropped quite a bit. The members around him gave him looks of disapproval. It was too late for regret for Slice You Up. He could sense that his authority as a leader had decreased a level. He was stuck in a very difficult situation, and he could only quickly withdraw from the scene with his men. The players around him were baffled. They did not know why or how the previously arrogant Kill All Guild cowered in a matter of seconds. Jade Green Sky thought that Kill All was afraid of their sky territory. What's happening? When did my guild become this cool? With no one blocking the way anymore, the players realized there was a prize pool mission. They finally realized Kill All Guild's motive. They were filled with righteous indignation, for that was totally unfair. Look at them trying to claim the entire prize pool. Gross. After crusading against Kill All, the players then turned their focus to the prize pool mission, becoming increasingly attracted to it. Everyone accepted the quest, all wanting a slice of that huge cake. The prize pool slowly amounted to over 500,000 EXP, and to those players, it was simply an unthinkable sum, to the point that just thinking of it would make them stop breathing. There were only 5 people that would be entitled to the prize pool rewards. The ranking depended on the energy expended. Compared to the number of participants, 5 was undoubtedly a small number. But the problem was that everyone thought they would be the lucky person. Even though it was almost as unlikely as winning the lottery, there was still that glimmer of hope that shone in their eyes. If they were chosen, it would be like hitting the jackpot. The players were not even at LV10 yet. Their combat strength was extremely low, but the good thing about them was that they were not afraid of death. With a pistol, they could deal a bit of damage. At least with everyone around, they could combine their firepower. This was why Han Xiao thought of the quest. The forest of Bighorn Village was vast, and the huge amount of information on the darknet helped mark the exact route of the Germinal organization's evacuating troops. Everyone arrived at the place where the trap was marked. Players teamed up and spread out to ambush. Among them, the players from the closed beta were obviously preferred as teammates. Of course, those with a guild would be the most advantageous. Teaming was the best advantage one could have. Everyone knew that solely relying on one's efforts alone would never get one onto the list. Maple Moon was a little down. Every player had a team. She was just a step slower and did not manage to find anyone to team up with. Han Xiao noticed and called Maple Moon. He took out his modified sniper rifle, as well as several rounds of ammunition, and handed it to Maple Moon. "I'll lend you this gun, stay by my side." Maple Moon clasped her 2 hands over her tiny mouth in surprise with a cute look of shock. She had thought that this was the benefit of triggering the secret quest. But upon seeing the traits of the sniper rifle, she was stuck in a difficult position. The sniper rifle required an attribute of at least LV.1 in sniper. Maple Moon pouted. "But I don't know how to use this. Black Phantom has imparted the ability sniper to you. Do you want to expend 2000 EXP to learn it?" Han Xiao had not taught the gamers about the sniper ability. Maple Moon was shocked and happy at the same time. She agreed without a second thought. Since Maple Moon was worthy of training, Han Xiao naturally became biased toward her. Of course, this was a secret between them. If other players felt that it is unfair, what can they do but restrain their complaints? In this materialistic society, people without resources had no say. A gust of wind whistled through the forest. The ambushing players all had nervous yet excited faces. It was the first battle for many of them. Jade Green Sky brought Sky Territories members to camouflage themselves in the forest. It was a must for him to attain one of the top 3 prizes from the prize pool mission. He thought to himself, my biggest rival should be Kill All. First place is bound to be either of us. On the other hand, Slice You Up was still extremely troubled by Han Xiao's extreme drop in reputation, but the quest still had to be done. He took a look at his dejected guild members. Don't think too much. Just finish this quest first. We cannot let Sky Territories members get ahead of us. The passing time was like a sharp knife, killing any warmth in the atmosphere. Han Xiao took out the report he had gotten from the dark net. He took one final look. There were 2 combat executives in the evacuating troops, Freyer and Seabury. The 2 of them had once been part of the same elite army squad, each over LV-30, but they were of no threat to him. Woo-woo. The sound of the engine came from far away. The sniper rifle's electromagnetic scanner showed the Germinal organization's troops on its radar. Han Xiao reoriented his vision, becoming extremely alert. Maple Moon followed Han Xiao's every word and action, sprawling on the ground with the sniper rifle. Suddenly, Han Xiao seemed to have disappeared. He was clearly right in front of her. How could he have vanished from her vision? This made her very uncomfortable. You have entered stealth state. Agility stats plus 8%. Your next strike will have a sneak attack effect. You have entered steady aim stat. Your next shot has plus 15% shooting power. Night Stalker had bestowed Han Xiao with many hidden skills, and accompanied with his flaming will, anybody shot was bound to be destroyed. There was the little flying dagger in the past. Today there is my deathly blow. Haha, this sounds so good. This shot was specially prepared for the executives. Han Xiao held his breath and aimed steadily like a patient hunter awaiting his prey. The Germinal organization's evacuating troops entered the trap and were almost immediately caught off guard by the many animal traps set up. But they were also puzzled by the animal traps. Was this really a trap? If this was not a trap, how fierce was the beast in the area to require so many animal traps? And if this was a trap, who would be stupid enough to use animal traps to deal with an armed force? It was so obvious as well. Freyer, the conductor, felt something was amiss. He said in the intercom, "Be careful, there is a possibility of an ambush. Deploy minesweepers." The troops slowed their advancement. Carrying the metal detectors, the minesweepers overtook them. The Germinal organization had been shifting their bases in massive operations, and many troops had been intercepted. Their enemies were not just from the 6 nations. There were other enemies looking for revenge, taking advantage of their current situation. When Germinal was still strong, these enemies did not dare make any move. But now that they were met with such a good opportunity for revenge, they all got excited. Freyer and Seabury had been caught in an ambush during their journey, and they had all raised their alertness greatly since. Beep beep beep. The metal detectors flashed in red, indicating that there were mines underground. At the same time, the scouts also found traces of human activity. Freyer's expression darkened. Enemy ambush ahead. Just as the Germinal troops were sweeping the field for mines, the players who were hiding in the bushes spotted their enemy as well. The heavily armed Germinal soldiers and armored vehicles looked formidable. The players dared not anger them. But at the slightest thought of the huge reward pool, the players were unable to resist. Some jumped out of the bushes immediately, firing their pistols from afar. The Germinal soldiers habitually wanted to sprawl down and hide, but they realized that the enemy's bullets were almost going into outer space. Their aim was just so bad. Counterattack. The Germinal troops returned fire without hesitation. The submachine guns fired away, the armored vehicles' machine guns roared, and some heavy firepower guns could be heard, too. The fierce artillery instantly tore the players running toward them into pieces. Chapter 132, A Death God. What the hell is this damage? I died instantly when the explosion blast grazed me. My EXPs dropped so drastically. The first wave of players eliminated died tragically, leaving the rest of the players in awe of the Germinal organization's firepower. Slice You Up gritted his teeth. Task requirement is to achieve highest damage. Doesn't matter if you die, just deal damage. Go. The penalty in Galaxy for dying was not light to say the least. EXP was deducted proportionally to a player's level, and the player could only be revived up to a maximum of 10 times within 6 days. With every death, the waiting time before the next revival would increase. After hitting the limit, there would be a temporary ban on the player. Despite all this, it was worth dying once or twice for the prize pool missions. The players from Sky Territory also had the same thoughts, and all the other players followed suit and fearlessly, albeit tactlessly, made their attack on the Germinal soldiers, giving the latter a shock. All these enemies are rushing to die. Seabury was surprised. He had never seen such a fearless army, like a pack of starving wolves, dying to get a piece of them. Their spirit and momentum were impressive, but in terms of combat ability, they were shamefully pathetic. They are just a motley crowd, let's satisfy them since they want to die so badly. Freyr snorted and promptly commanded the surrounding troops. Since there were mines buried in the forest, the Germinal troops stopped their armored vehicles and started using their armored vehicles as a temporary base for their counterattacks, killing off waves of players with ease. Shit. Can't even touch them. I already died twice. God damn it. The Germinal troops was dominating the fight. The other players were being massacred, yet they refused to give up in the hope of dealing some damage to claim the quest rewards. I will give them a surprise. Seabury smirked. He saw absolutely no threat from these enemies. He was itching to toy with them. Freyr frowned slightly. Don't go crazy, we are in a rush. Humph. I'm always quick with my kills. Seabury hopped off the armored vehicle. With his strong physical attributes, all he needed was a slight push against the floor with his feet, and he was off dashing toward the players like a cannonball. His foot landed on a player and instantly caused the poor soul's chest to cave in before the player was sent flying, hitting against a tree with an explosion of blood and flesh. The shooters dealt no damage to Seabury, since he would dodge way before they could aim. Even if some bullets did hit him, it would be nothing but single-digit damage. Seabury went on a killing spree like a tiger among the sheep, and the players were desperately trying to retreat. However, Seabury would catch up and kill them before they could react. Many tried to assess Seabury's stats. Seabury. Level. Class. Threat level, extremely fatal. Another extremely fatal dude. No one knew what this threat level meant until this moment, but the contrast in skill level was apparent. The combat strength of a high-level character was indeed to be feared. Black Phantom and Seabury have about the same combat strength. This thought flashed across the minds of many of the players. Seabury was covered in his enemy's blood, like a ravaging beast. The scene looked so realistic that it scared some of the more timid players, who quickly adjusted the graphics to PG mode to reduce the gore. Some turned on the recording function to capture this highly bloody scene. A panic-stricken player fell, and Seabury, in the midst of his killing spree, laughed as he started to crush the poor player like a cockroach. Suddenly, blood spilled out from Seabury's chest, and a gaping hole appeared at the place where Seabury's heart was supposed to be. Seabury stopped moving, his entire face frozen. Then, he collapsed and fell to the ground without a sound. Is he dead? He just got killed in one shot. Everyone was thrown into shock and confusion. How did the bloodlusting monstrous enemy just get defeated in a split second? Then, the electrical current buzz of a sniper rifle from afar came within earshot. Jade Green Sky, Slice You Up, and all the other players that were still alive glanced unanimously in the direction of the rifle. Everyone remembered that it was roughly where Black Phantom was camping. This snipe kill was by Black Phantom. Even such a vicious enemy was killed by Black Phantom in one shot. The players all gasped in disbelief. Black Phantom was also extremely fatal in terms of threat level, but this was way more fatal than Seabury. Black Phantom was obviously on a higher level than Seabury, but it was still incredible that the fearsome Seabury got killed in a single shot. Han Xiao left a mysterious and immeasurable impression on everyone. Nothing was scarier than a killer who could instantly kill his victims. Seabury is very strong in terms of energy attributes. How could he have been killed instantly? Freyr was shocked. This shot sounds familiar, the ability to instant kill a superhuman. Only one person is capable of doing this. Freyr's face changed immediately. Must be the ghost-level Black Phantom from the Blood Pack Society. God damn it, why is such a high-level monster finding trouble with us? I thought he only does bounty hunting. Black Phantom's reputation preceded him in the underground world in these 2 months because of his amazing stats. He had killed the Raging Bolt by Jin in an instant. Even the famous Invisible Demon was running for his dear life from Black Phantom. It was no wonder that Black Phantom rose to fame as the best assassin in the Blood Pack Society, and his name began to instill fear in many. The Germinal organization gave a command long ago, asking its members to avoid direct conflict with Black Phantom. It would be troublesome to deal with this type of super assassin, even for big organizations. Freyr wanted to retreat, and he ordered for it with no hesitation. All force retreat. It was too late. Han Xiao activated the EMP disruptor he had buried. Most of the Germinal troops' armored vehicles were in the effective range of the disruptor, and they broke down immediately, crackling and sizzling with electricity. 1/3 of the vehicles were fortunate enough to be outside of the effective range. Freyr's was one of them. Freyr could not be bothered with the rest of the troops. He knew that he needed to retreat. Don't even think about escaping after you have entered my sight. Han Xiao's glaze was as cold as the frozen ice as he activated a particular program. Having max-leveled basic programming, Han Xiao could bind most mechanical control systems to his computer. 3 metallic plates were lying at a spot 300 meters horizontally away from the Germinal troops. Suddenly, they all cracked open from the center and started a series of self-folding, forming a multi-barreled heavy machine gun, with the metal plate as the base of the battery. This was the foldable portable battery that Han Xiao had buried beforehand. They were equipped with automatic firing systems, and the ammunition loaded was all highly explosive and could pierce through armor. The firing range had a 500-meter radius. The portable battery was one of Han Xiao's new blueprints. It was the product from a mixture of various technology, a fixed battery combined with folding technology and many other designs. Han Xiao had spent a lot of effort and had failed countless times before arriving at the final model, which was very handy. He could have arrived at something similar by merging different ideas, but inventing the fort by himself saved him from using EXP. As Han Xiao learned more and more blueprints, it was becoming obvious that he was capable of grasping the functionality and usage of knowledge. Within the last 2 months, he already bought the last 3 types of basic knowledge that he had yet to acquire from the slightly friendlier camps. They were basic energy conversion, basic thermodynamics, basic acoustics. To learn all 15 types of basic knowledge was a feat even for some full-level players, not to mention players under level 40. The multi-barreled machine gun aimed at the Germinal troops, who were a few hundred meters away, automatically, warmed up for 1 second, and fired away. The fiery metallic storm blew all the trees in the way to bits, and the immobilized the Germinal troops' armored vehicles could not escape the same fate. There was nothing but screams of agony and firework-like explosions. The cost of a small foldable battery port was high, as was the ammunition. Wars fought by mechanics were all expensive like this, but with sufficient funds, mechanics were capable of having dominating firepower. Only a rich and resourceful guy like Han Xiao was able to fully utilize the abilities of a mechanic to the fullest extent. The firepower from the battery turret gave the rest of the players a huge shock, but this shock quickly turned into a craze over Han Xiao. So, this is how mechanics fight. One guy soloing against an entire army. Dude is majorly OP. Han Xiao did not idle either, he began sniping the enemies one by one. He smiled upon seeing the excitement among the other players. He did not have to use the battery turret against the small Germinal troop, but he did so anyway for the sake of demonstrating the destructive power of mechanics. However, looks could be deceiving. When the players went to research about the actual cost to play as a mechanic, they would find the painful truth behind this vocation: using ONA to create happiness, GTFO if you don't have money. Mechanics would be very weak in early games because most mechanics were poor. With the enemies mostly defeated, the rest of the players realized that it was the best time for them to deal extra damage, and they all began to rush forward to attack the army. Maple Moon also started firing. Her sniper scope was equipped with electromagnetism detector and aim assist, so almost every shot of hers could hit the Germinal soldiers. She gained momentum, and her damage output became steady. Although the realistic battle scenes were too gory for Maple Moon, she got used to it quickly as she had experience with gory scenes from other games. Moreover, she could change the game setting to make the graphics less bloody. Han Xiao shot through Freyr's knees but spared his life. Then, he switched to Red Falcon and started clearing the remaining Germinal soldiers at a rate much more efficient than normal players. 1 shot, 1 kill. The sound of gunfire gradually ceased, the battle had come to an end. Many seemed like they wanted to watch more. The paralyzed Freyr could not be bothered with his own agony but looked at the crowd of spectating players in shock. He had been watching the battle very carefully, and he noticed that many of the players, who were killed earlier on, came back. Are they zombies or what? Freyr was confused. Han Xiao, clad in full black, appeared. The players started to quieten down despite their excitement. He stood in front of Freyr, squatted down, and stared into the latter's eyes that were filled with shock and anger. Where were you all heading toward? Black Phantom, Germinal will never let you off. Freyr was furious. You got it the wrong way around. Han Xiao expressionlessly dragged Freyr into the forest by his collar. Shortly afterwards, bone-chilling screams could be heard. It was not difficult to imagine that Freyr was being tortured, and everyone felt a shiver down their spine. After 10 minutes, the screaming finally ended. Han Xiao reappeared but without Freyr. He wiped his hands clean of blood using a rag. He glanced around and saw that all eyes were on him. Now that he had the information that he wanted, he was free to end the mission. All the players received a notification simultaneously. Hunt down Germinal has been completed. The prize pool has 520,000 EXP. Damage output ranking. Number 1, Maple Moon, Solo. Number 2, Jade Green Sky, Team. Number 3, Slice You Up, Team. Number 4. Reward pool will be allocated 30%, 25%, 20%, 15%, 10% of EXP accordingly. Everyone was shocked. No one expected this ranking. She overtook Sky territory and kill all, hitting the scoreboard with solo output. Incredible. Who is Maple Moon? Is she a professional player? I never heard of this ID before though. The crowd was going crazy. Chapter 133, Mechanics are so powerful. Jade Green Sky and Slice You Up were shocked. A solitary player's output was actually higher than that of a guild. The EXP earned by a team had to be divided equally among the players, but Maple Moon could keep the hundreds of thousands of EXP to herself. What this meant was extraordinary. In an instant, she had exceeded all the players to hold a safe lead, and that included the other novice planets. Maple Moon was hit with shock by her unexpected success, her face full of disbelief as she stared at the EXP bar on the interface. She had used a sniper rifle with firm and stable output through the battle and did not expect that she would emerge as the top player. She knew her limitations well. This was only possible because she had relied fully on Black Phantom. This was obviously a benefit that came from triggering the secret quest. Maple Moon made up her mind, she had to persist in unearthing the secret quest. Black Phantom was such a powerful aid, so she had to stay on good terms with Black Phantom. Han Xiao returned to the car, and Maple Moon immediately returned the sniper rifle. Some players followed them and were surprised to realize that Black Phantom was actually interacting with Maple Moon on close terms. Jade Green Sky immediately reacted. There is a secret quest. She is so lucky. Everyone stared enviously at Maple Moon. Maple Moon was not used to the attention from the crowd, so she blushed and hid in the car. Han Xiao saw this but did not chase anyone away. Instead, he started driving his car back to Bighorn Village. The players had no choice but to follow on foot. As he was driving, Han Xiao scrolled through the forum. Suddenly, a new post was pushed to the top of the forum, a high-ranking NPC's combat capability. Clicking into the post, the battle scene that just occurred popped up on the page. Some players uploaded their recorded videos. The Germinal organization's troops were displaying their formidable combat capability. When Seaberry was murdering players, there were a few barrages. The audience felt as if they were present at the scene. They were tensed up with nervousness. However, the next moment, Seaberry was killed in one shot. The shot blew out explosively, and blood was flying everywhere. Then, the portable battery demonstrated its prowess, crippling the Germinal troops in an instant. The scene was even more shocking. Responses to the post were posted in the dozens every second, and it soon accumulated a few thousand responses. That character was so powerful, but he got killed in one shot. Isn't Black Phantom the advanced NPC from Bighorn Village? What is his level? Mechanic is so powerful. I think there's great prospects. Damn, I'm in a planet with a magic background, there are no mechanics. Scrolling through the responses that were marveling at the scene, Han Xiao smiled to himself. Faking it, but the idea of showing my strength really worked. The effect was apparent. Once he got to the settlement, the players that had hesitated in switching their class were now fervently picking up the basics. Prior to this, the entire Bighorn Village had only 20% of players choosing mechanic. After the video went viral online, players' excitement for mechanics was just breaking through the roofs. The players swaying precariously between classes immediately switched to mechanic. 100, 500, then 1,000. The EXP on the interface was just piling up like crazy. Han Xiao kept his face straight to not smile. In the short few days at Bighorn Village, he had collected 2 or 3 million EXP just by lazing around, and that was comparable to accumulating EXP through 4 or 5 missions. This was way safer and more efficient. The player market was indeed a market with the most potential. The NPC functions were really useful. Imparting skills was allowing him to gain great profit without any cost, and that was only possible because he owned the interface as well as the NPC functions. Han Xiao knew that you could not be impatient in grooming students, so he only imparted basic skills. The players that were convinced to switch to mechanic would come to be his key customers in the future. After all, Han Xiao's was a mechanic. After these version 1.0 players gained a deep understanding of mechanics, they would realize that they had been scammed. By then, it would be too late. Even if they lamented to heaven and knocked their heads against the earth, it would be pointless. They could only choose to continue or start from nothing again. In this way, Han Xiao's goal would have been achieved as long as these players wanted to improve their combat effectiveness quickly. They can only rely on him to buy advanced machinery. You want to become strong? How can you not spend money? Han Xiao took a smoke, and he thought to himself, after a few versions, you will be thanking me. In this way, he brushed off his sense of guilt. On one side, Jade Green Sky approached Maple Moon and asked politely, "Babe, I wonder if you're free now." Maple Moon looked up doubtfully and saw a group of male players with a look of thirst in their eyes. She stepped back nervously and warned, "What are you up to? I warn you, this game prohibits any sexual harassment." The members of Sky Territory were at a loss whether to laugh or cry. "Babe, we are curious about your secret quest, not in you." Jade Green Sky coughed. "I only want to ask how you triggered Black Phantom's secret quest." "Don't worry, we'll reward you fairly." Maple Moon shook her head, rejecting his request without a pause. She enjoyed unearthing secret quests, but that was not because of the profit, and she did not want Black Phantom to dislike her. With no alternative, Jade Green Sky could only give up and walk away. Just then, a member suggested, "We could ask around to see if there were other players who overheard the conversation between Maple Moon and Black Phantom." Jade Green Sky's eyes lit up, and he nodded in agreement. And there were really some results. They managed to find out the secret way to trigger secret quests from a player. Han Xiao was sending off the last few players who had come to switch to mechanic when Jade Green Sky rushed up to him. With the question that Maple Moon had asked in mind, Jade Green Sky asked, "Black Phantom, why are you enemies with the Germinal organization?" "Oh, someone is rising to the bait." Han Xiao looked at him. Although Jade Green Sky was the leader of a guild, his potential was not good at all. It was better to answer directly. "What does it have to do with you?" Jade Green Sky was at a loss. Why was he getting a different reaction compared to the response Maple Moon had gotten? Was he cheated? Not willing to give up, he kept on changing his lines. Han Xiao cast his eyes downward and refused to play along with him. In the end, Jade Green Sky could only give up in frustration. Unless it depends on the gender. This thought suddenly came up in Jade Green Sky's mind. He stared at Han Xiao's unattractive face for a long while, and he felt like he was enlightened. The player's market potential in Bighorn Village had been temporarily exhausted. It was still only the open beta. The players were rather fresh, and their lack of unity resembled a plate of loose sand. With growth, as they completed more missions, Han Xiao would have more opportunities to exploit them. Han Xiao had a set of commercial plans for players, and this was only the initial link. As players advanced, his plan could then be gradually implemented. He was not in a hurry to go to the next novice village. He had a friendly chat with Freyr and fished out some information on the Germinal organization's withdrawal route in South Continent. This is a large-scale war, which meant that he could probably get quite a number of A-level missions. With his character, he was sure to get a foot in. What would become of him if he did not try to get involved? With the wistful gaze of players in the Bighorn Village, Han Xiao drove his vehicle away. Maple Moon looked at the car driving off into the horizon and told herself that she would wait until she reached LV-20 before she contacted Black Phantom. Just half an hour after Han Xiao left, Frenzied Sword arrived at Bighorn Village, panting furiously. He grabbed a player and asked, "Where is Black Phantom?" "He has already left." Frenzied Sword's face turned white. He was late by half a day because the Western capital was under martial law to search for Germinal spies. He felt like weeping but had no tears left. How infuriating. The battle video stayed as the top post on the forum. Han Xiao was the strongest fighter the players had seen so far. He could kill a strong enemy in one shot from hundreds of meters away. Not only that, he could also deploy a portable battery turret. Players were very envious of his capabilities. Whenever he appeared, he was like a dark phantom, omnipotent and mysterious. If not for his unappealing look, due to the facial simulator, he would have many female fans. The first player to upload the videos was Mu Chen. He never had received any responses for his posts in the past, but this was his first time experiencing the feeling of having 10,000 people replying to his post. He was reading through the replies enthusiastically. Ding dong. He received a notification from the system. Mu Chen was puzzled. He had not added any friends. Who would send him a message? Dear esteemed player. Your video has been selected as promotional material for version 1.0. The reward will be sent to your account within 1 working day. Do look out for it. Galaxy Official. Mu Chen was completely caught off guard by the pleasant surprise. Chapter 134, Finally Found You. The vast majority of players were still busy with missions, but players in teams, essentially serious guilds or professional players, were more purposeful in their actions. They planned their developmental pathway carefully and worked steadily to advance. But the Guild of Gods was in an awkward situation. Jupiter had dumped all the daily administrative work to the vice president. He could not give up on the A-level mission. He had been leading a group of people to search high and low for germinal spaces, but to no avail. Without any other means, he could only focus on the forum to see if any players were in contact with germinal. Despite all odds, Jupiter managed to find a lead. Andrea Mainland is germinal space camp. Any player who arrives on Andrea Mainland can join germinal side easily. But this lead was useless for Jupiter. The core members of the A-level mission were all in southern continent, and Zero was more likely to be in southern continent too. However, Jupiter could not possibly bring a team over to Andrea Mainland. Most importantly, they had no access to another mainland. In fact, they could actually take cruise ships or aircrafts, but none of the players had reached this level. The most popular post on the forum was the battle scene recorded by the players at Bighorn Village. Jupiter had not seen it before, but he was finally opening it to take a look. He was caught off guard by shock. Just as he was about to close the post, he suddenly had an outlandish thought. He paused the video and scrutinized the scene. He finally concluded that the troop that was attacked had the germinal organization's emblem on them. He had finally found the organization. Jupiter almost burst into tears before it occurred to him that the troop had been destroyed. His face changed suddenly. He quickly read through the content of the post, but unfortunately, the user did not elaborate on the details. Jupiter was eager to find out what had happened, so he had members contact the players in Bighorn Village. The guild was so efficient that he soon got to know that the troop that had been attacked was in fact an evacuating germinal organization unit. He was dumbfounded. Evacuate? Why are they evacuating? Where are they evacuating from? What is the scale of this evacuation, a single unit or a full battalion? Jupiter gulped nervously. He had an ominous feeling in his gut. Seems like we won't be returning to the germinal organization anytime soon. This A-level mission was such a scam. Jupiter was so frustrated. Before the team could start on the mission, the organization that had issued the mission had run away. In the evening, the setting sun covered the earth in a blood-red glow. The outlines the moons were looming in the twilight sky. In the woods outside Bighorn Village, Frenzied Sword was walking down the path, downcast in despondence. I must find him. Frenzied Sword quickly broke away from his despondent mood and was talking to himself to boost his own spirits. Are you looking for me? A voice came from ahead. Frenzied Sword looked up. A truck was parked a few meters ahead with a man in black standing by it, staring at him intensely. Black Phantom. Frenzied Sword was ecstatic with excitement. Every cloud had a silver lining. You. Have we met? He could not be certain that Black Phantom was in fact Han Xiao. With much worry and fear, he felt like he was almost waiting for a verdict after he had asked the question. Han Xiao smiled, revealing a tinge of amusement in his eyes. What do you think? That familiar look? The look that made his hair stand on end. Frenzied Sword was seized by joy. He was certain that this person was Han Xiao. I'm so glad that I didn't give up, and I finally found you. Oh, Savior. Come with me. With a faint smile on his face, Han Xiao gestured toward his truck with his head. Trying his best to conceal his excitement, Frenzied Sword followed closely behind and got into the truck. He did not care where Han Xiao was taking him as long as he could stay with Han Xiao. Han Xiao smiled to himself. After spending some happy days together, he remembered Frenzied Sword well. But this was not the reason he chose to bring Frenzied Sword along. Frenzied Sword had great potential, and he was worth grooming. In addition, having a player by his side meant he could send him to check out unknown and dangerous areas. Frenzied Sword would not die anyway, so he could be assured and use him well. Han Xiao could use Frenzied Sword's help in his next moves, so when he found that Frenzied Sword was following him, he stopped to wait for him. Frenzied Sword did not realize that he was being treated as a lab rat again. He was full of excitement, checking out the truck with much curiosity. He remembered that Han Xiao was a member of Star Dragon's intelligence agency during the closed beta. How did he become Black Phantom out of the blue? But that was not important. As long as he could be with Han Xiao, Frenzied Sword would be content. "What are we going to do now?" asked Frenzied Sword after his excitement died down. "Something evil." Han Xiao took out a tablet and opened the map. He drew a circle around one region and threw it to Frenzied Sword. Frenzied Sword took a brief look. "Tidramara River, what kind of place is that?" "A battleground," Han Xiao replied calmly. He stepped firmly on the accelerator, and the truck raced off. Tidramara River was a large river in southern continent connected to the sea. In the darkness of the night, a long line of boats was cruising down the river. This was a huge fleet of ships disguised as fishing boats. The boats were actually Germinal warships, well equipped with various weapons, anti-detection jammers, machine gun arrays, and so on. As a result of the Six Nations cleanup campaign, the Germinal organization's bases had begun to withdraw. A small number of important personnel was taking the air route. Most of the resources, transportation vehicles, and ordinary armed personnel were evacuating via a water route. The evacuation was nearing its end. This fleet was the last remaining unit to withdraw from southern continent. The outer layer of frigates was guarding the barges in the center that were ferrying vehicles and armed personnel. The evacuation plan was to go out to the sea along a tributary of the Tidramara River and join forces with other ground troops near the mouth of the sea. The ground troops would then board the ships. The person in charge, Lin Yu, was the chief officer of the largest Germinal base in southern continent. Now he had taken the role of a commander and was also within the fleet. Lin Yu was a middle-aged man, yet he was also an executive officer that was combat-ready. He was analyzing the map with a solemn face in the command room. There were many links in the evacuation plan. The fleet and the ground troops had to ensure that they arrived at the mouth of the sea at the same time because the fleet could not possibly stay put. During the evacuation, a large number of Star Dragon and Hesla fighter planes were performing aerial reconnaissance. The fleet's whereabouts had likely been exposed, and fear on the fleet was rising. Lin Yu knew very well that Hesla and Star Dragon would have set up a trap near the mouth of the sea to capture them. Their navy, air force, and army would be waiting to intercept their fleet and capture them all at once. But from the very beginning, Lin Yu knew clearly that it was impossible to evacuate sneakily. A bitter battle was inevitable. Only by tearing past the blockade line could his troops escape alive. "As long as we follow along the Tidramara River to the sea, we can get out of this nightmare, but don't hold the illusion of a smooth passage. Lads, we will be facing a premeditated ambush. The Star Dragon and Hesla Navy will do whatever they can to sink us near the mouth of the sea. I've been through 13 wars. Some of them were big battles, others small. Some of you may be veterans like me, and some of you may be new recruits. Regardless, our destiny is the same. Break through the blockade line, and we can stay alive. If you are captured, even if you can survive, you will face indefinite imprisonment by Star Dragon and Hesla. You can say goodbye to freedom in the sun. The Six Nations are a group of hypocritical and insidious villains who speak of peace and freedom but started a war. Don't forget that your motherland was destroyed by the guns of the Six Nations. Never forget that hatred of blood. We have no choice but to fight till the very end." These words were Lin Yu's speech for his subordinates. The armed personnel on board knew that there was going to be a fierce battle ahead, and they were all ready to fight. There was a number of Germinal executive officers in the fleet, and Hyla was among them. She was worried and apprehensive about the impending fight. In her opinion, it was a naive hope to think of breaking through the blockade of Star Dragon and Hesla's ships. Many of them would perish, and only a small number of people could survive. However, Commander Lin Yu seemed to have it all worked out. Thus, Hyla could only suppress her unease and conceal it from others. On the outside, she seemed the stoic person she had always been. In fact, for Hyla, even if every Germinal member on the fleet died, she could not care less. She hated the Germinal organization, but she could only survive with the help of these Germinal soldiers. She knew that her hands were covered in blood, and she had never shunned it. Self-reproach and compassion belonged to good people. These emotions were too costly for her. From the day of her awakening, she knew that she could never be a good person. To rule death meant that she was destined to be banished to hell. But her sister, Aurora, was completely different. She was an angel who used her love for the world to touch everyone she met. The only thing Hyla regretted was that she did not protect her sister well, resulting in her falling into the hands of the Germinal organization. No matter what, I have to live on. Only by surviving and demonstrating her usefulness could she help to reduce her sister's suffering. Anyone that stopped her would be an enemy. Staring at the waves of the river, Hyla was cold and stoic. Chapter 135, Ah, what a familiar taste. Translator Atlas Studios. Editor Atlas Studios. The Tidramara River branched out into the sea. The fleet of Star Dragon and Hesla ships formed a tight blockade, and the riverbed of the estuary was also planted with many mines. Both countries knew the whereabouts of the Germinal organization's evacuation troops. Star Dragon and Hesla regarded this battle with high importance as it was an excellent opportunity to eliminate an army of the Germinal organization. The inescapable net had been laid. In the eyes of the two countries, Germinal was a trap beast. Even if it knew there was a hunter trap waiting, it would have no choice but to approach it. The battlefield was divided into two areas, and each country was responsible for one of the two areas. Hesla was mainly responsible for the sea blockade, while Star Dragon's forces were in charge of land interception. This method of cooperation split the responsibility and prevented command conflicts. Considering the individual combat effectiveness of the Germinal executives, Division 13 also sent secret agents to act as an emergency team and an assault troop. They would take on special tactical tasks and were waiting at a small dock near the estuary to be dispatched by the army commander. Jiang Wei's team was among them. A row of boats meant for assault had docked neatly, and green military tents were hidden in the grove behind the dock. Despite the 2 months, the team had not changed much. Jiang Wei was as serious as before, Li Yalin was as sexy as ever, Lin Yao still looked mistreated, and Lambert was as silent as a stone. The only change was the addition of a young new face. Ho Yu, you've been with us for a month now and have been through enough training. This mission is really important, so do not make any mistakes, Jiang Wei instructed the newcomer Ho Yu in the team's tent. Ho Yu was a thin young man. He had 2 guns around his waist. With long, flowing hair, he was quite handsome. He nodded and smiled arrogantly. Leader, you worry too much. During this past month, which task have I not completed successfully? Jiang Wei nodded in agreement. Ho Yu was an agent trained in Division 13 and had filled the vacancy of Han Xiao by joining the team. He had been performing well and did not cause Jiang Wei any worry. Li Yalin hugged her hands to her chest and sat one side with her legs folded. She was frowning and appeared to be in a bad mood. The truth was, after Han Xiao had skipped town, the agents who had lost their deposits all came to get their money back, and since then, her mood had never been good. Ho Yu came over and sat next to Li Yalin. He teased, "Beauty Li, what are you thinking about?" Li Yalin glared at him and retorted, "Are you a curious baby? How is this any of your concern?" Ho Yu wanted to get close to Li Yalin badly. When he first joined and laid eyes on Li Yalin, he was stunned by her beauty. It pleased him to no end that he was teammates with someone this beautiful. Hence, he frequently tried to strike up conversations with Li Yalin. However, after being fooled by Han Xiao, she had developed a strong dislike toward newcomers. Thus, whenever she saw Ho Yu she would think of Han Xiao, so naturally, she did not have a good impression of Ho Yu. Li Yalin was so annoyed by Ho Yu that she suddenly smiled menacingly. "You love talking, right?" While speaking, she clenched her fists and cracked her knuckles. One could almost see the anger fumes rising from within and forming in her fists. Ho Yu recoiled immediately. He knew that once Li Yalin showed this expression, she meant to beat people up. When he first joined the team, he had experienced it firsthand and spent 3 days in the medical department. Lin Biao, who was watching from the side, shook his head and feigned maturity. Little monkey, you are still too terrified. In terms of courage, I only admire Brother Xiao. Who exactly is Brother Xiao? Hou Yu was puzzled. Since joining the team, he had learned that this team's full strength was 6, but there was always one person missing. It was reasonable to cross out those players who were missing, but in this team, the 6th spot was always kept. Also, he always heard the team speak of Brother Xiao. This made Hou Yu extremely curious about this 6th person. Li Yelin exploded immediately and fumed, "Do not mention his name in front of me. Do not forget that we still have a mission to complete. You can't punch me." Lin Biao looked composed, but his legs were trembling. Hou Yu felt that Li Yelin's reaction was slightly exaggerated. Based on his experience, this was exactly the reaction of a resentful woman who had been abandoned by her man. On second thought, maybe a heavy debt could result in the same reaction as well. Jiang Wei shook his head, let out a breath, and explained, "Han Xiao was originally our teammate. However, he left because of some special reasons." Special reasons? Hou Yu used his imagination and probed, was he sent to carry out a special mission? Jiang Wei shook his head. Was he transferred to another team by the superior? Jiang Wei shook his head. Then where did he go? Hou Yu was bewildered. Li Yelin huffed. He could be dead for all we know. Who are you kidding? Why keep his spot if he really is dead? You all speak as if you all hate him, but why do I feel like you all actually miss him a lot? Silence. After a long time, Li Yelin stood and smiled slightly. Choose a way to die. Hou Yu scampered off. Lambert shook his head and kept his sword sheathed. Star Dragon's infantry army was lying in ambush in the valley near the estuary. The goal was to intercept Germinal's infantry troops that had come to converge. Sleepy Winter, Twinkle Fried Rice, and Rainy Kim served as backline support. The three had joined the Star Dragon army during beta testing but had since changed their professions. Twinkle Fried Rice and Rainy Kim were in the martial arts line while Sleepy Winter's character had exploded and awakened his ability using the store's DNA. As recruits, they were also appointed to act as backline support in this battle. What pleased them was that they managed to spark a Camp Destroyer series quest, the Battle of Tijramara River. However, they soon became frustrated. This series had more than a dozen targets. They could only complete the few backline support targets in the series, which were the simplest and had the lowest rewards. Other tasks such as killing 10 Germinal soldiers, assassinating a Germinal executive, or destroying transport vehicles were completely beyond their capabilities. This does not seem like our level of mission, Sleepy Winter grumbled. Both Twinkle Fried Rice and Rainy Kim agreed. They had been drawn into a difficult mission that was totally beyond their current level. Looking at their novice level, it was simply none of their business. The three of them had no idea that the Germinal organization and the Six Nations had a head-on conflict that happened 3 months after the beta game. At that time, the players had a basic understanding of the world structure, and they also possessed some combat strength. The conflict between Germinal and the Six Nations started happening on a very small scale, and bit by bit, it enabled players to become involved and have a chance to show off. However, Han Xiao had completely disrupted the whole process. He had brought forward the conflict between the Six Nations and the Germinal organization, leaving the current players totally incapable of participating. To be exact, the players had been cheated of their original main quest. This benefited Han Xiao as it decreased the variables bought by the players. Whoosh! 2 heavy-duty transport helicopters bearing a Fabian logo landed slowly in a valley. The wind was so strong that the grass at the landing site swayed in all directions like a wave. "Old Black, we've arrived," Pilot Antonio lazily called. "I can see. Also, do not call me Old Black," Han Xiao retorted. "Call Black Phantom if you must. Foolishly calling me Old Black will affect my luck." Antonio removed his earmuffs and puffed out a cloud of smoke. "Forget it, you don't have much luck anyway." "Get lost," Han Xiao said irritably. In the past 2 months, Han Xiao had maintained a good working relationship with the Fabian company, and Antonio was warming up to him day by day. Frenzied Sword hid in a corner on the helicopter, shivering while he watched the 2 extremely deadly godfathers talk and laugh merrily. Frenzied Sword had thought that Han Xiao would drive to their destination, but with just a phone call, 2 helicopters came to pick them up. At this moment, Frenzied Sword thought even higher of Han Xiao. Employees from Fabian carried down the supplies from the helicopters, and most of the items were weapons that Han Xiao had deposited with Fabian. He thought that he could use these weapons for this mission. There was also a disassembled truck that Fabian's maintenance team was working on reassembling. All the while, Han Xiao and Antonio were chatting at one side. Antonio had always thought that Han Xiao was only interested in the bounty and asked curiously, "I heard Stardragon and Hesla are planning to intersect the retreating Germinal troops in the Tidramara River, but what bad blood do you have with Germinal? How do you know which side I'll be helping?" Han Xiao chuckled. Antonio held a cigar in one hand while the other tucked in his jeans pocket, and he frowned. "Are you thinking of helping Germinal instead?" Although the Germinal organization was big in the underground world, other forces always kept a respectful distance from them. Ultimately, the underground world preferred to coexist peacefully. After all, only a stable situation would lead to profits. The Germinal organization was seen as a group of bandits who used hatred as motivation. Han Xiao refused to comment and walked to one side. He took out his phone and dialed another number, and the voice of Blood Pack Society's personnel could be heard. "Mr. Black Phantom, may I help you?" Ever since Han Xiao made it to top 10 of the killer list, the Blood Pack Society valued him greatly and gave him special treatment. There was someone on standby 24 hours to answer his calls and provide special services. Yup, decent and proper services. Part of the status came from his capabilities, and the other part was from his good relationship with Bennett, which was valued by the Darknet organization. "I need the latest movement of both the retreating Germinal troops as well as Stardragon and Hesla's troops." "Sure, I'm accessing the documents now. The information will be sent to your computer shortly." "Okay, I also need a helicopter on call at the small dock near the estuary of Tidramara River." "As you wish." Frenzied Sword, who was listening at one side, heard everything clearly. From his tone, he could really feel how powerful and strong Han Xiao was. After hanging up, Han Xiao noticed Frenzied Sword, who was idling at one side. He thought for a bit and decided to give him a mission that he just came up with. Mission: get high. Requirement: dance sexily to brighten the mood. Frenzied Sword's face was full of tears. Ah, the familiar taste of evil pranks. Chapter 136, On the Verge of a Battle. Tidramara River divided into branches flowing through Cloud Valley and eventually reaching the sea. The location where Han Xiao had landed was on the edge of Cloud Valley. According to the information from the Darknet organization, Germinals evacuating land troops would converge with their maritime troops after passing through the valley. Han Xiao's target was to intercept the land troops. He was clear that the two countries would have planted their land troops in ambush. It was highly possible that the troops were placed within Cloud Valley. If he got any closer, he would be discovered. At this juncture, he did not wish to be in contact with the two countries. "Looks like I'll have to choose a good spot." With that thought in his mind, Han Xiao folded his arms and watched Fabian's team assemble the truck's front and frame. They also hung up the mechanical equipment in the cargo properly. While they were working, they were shockingly watching Frenzied Sword seductively dancing at one side. "The item is delivered. I'll get going now." "All right, send Matthews my regards." Han Xiao nodded with a smile. Antonio waved before rising into the sky on his helicopter and disappeared swiftly over the horizon. The Fabian Company was only responsible for the transport of weapons and ammunition and had never taken part in battles. Han Xiao sat inside the truck and took a look at the detailed map that had been sent over through the Darknet. He was about to drive off when his phone rang. "Hello. Black Phantom, you're joining in the Germinal commotion?" Bennett asked over the phone, surprised. "Yes, you should come and play, too," Han Xiao jokingly replied. "The Darknet has always been neutral, don't go overboard. The Germinal organization is a crazy bunch of old hags, they'll attack whoever they see." "I'm very frustrated because of them," Bennett said helplessly. "Don't worry, I've never cheated my teammate." Bennett doubted his words. "Forget it, anyway, I will need your help with some matters later on." Over these past 2 months, Han Xiao had often called Bennett to keep in touch since he had Bennett's number. Furthermore, with Han Xiao's growing fame, Bennett was more than happy to converse with him. Hence, the relationship between the two of them was good. After pocketing his phone, Han Xiao shook his head, stepped on the accelerator, and drove along the edge of the valley toward the area of his selected spot. The river flowing through Cloud Valley provided moisture for the fertile soil. The terrain was relatively diversified, there were plains with shallow grasses, forests, and hills. The scenery was beautiful, it calmed and relaxed one's mind, compelling people to put down all their hatred and troubles. Star Dragon had a massive amount of land troops lying in ambush in the area, and they were armed with all kinds of battle equipment: tanks, attack helicopters, a coverage array of medium-distance guided missiles, and also a large number of minefields. The commander of the land troops was a Star Dragon official known as Huan Kai-uming, who had over 20 years of military service. His style was serious and meticulous. The reason Star Dragon's higher UPS had decided to use him was because they had taken a liking to Huan Kai-uming's stable style. As long as this battle followed the plan, victory is assured. In the command vehicle's position, Huan Kai-uming looked at the map filled with markings and nodded expressionlessly. Everything is in order, the first layer of ambush is a minefield. If Germinal do not come in, they will miss their chance to meet with the maritime forces. Therefore, even if they are aware of the traps, they will still have to advance forward. The armed helicopter troops are always on standby, they can attack the minesweeper enemy troops from above, and the array of missile vehicles is always aiming at the edge of the woods. Once the enemy crosses the woods, we can strike. As long as everything went according to the plan, the enemy would have no way to escape. The evacuating Germinal troops in the southern continent formed a large fleet with hundreds of different tanks. This huge army consisted of all the survivors of the retreating troops. Lin Yu was the chief commander, while the person in charge of the land troops was a white man known as Ugur. Ugur was well aware that the troops were about to be ambushed. In order to keep up with the maritime forces, they had to pass through Cloud Valley. Hence, they were unable to avoid this confrontation. However, he had already made preparations for it. The evacuation troops of these bases carried with them new weapons, and some were rather formidable, definitely able to catch the enemy by surprise. All these experimental weapons were important goods, and they even had some secret weapons who had undergone human experiments, specifically, the Super Soldier Project. After one big lap, the truck stopped at the edge on the other side of Cloud Valley. The tip-off had shown that this was a route that the Germinal land troops were unable to take as it was very far away. Han Xiao did not enter the woods and took out a pile of spider detectors, more than 40 in fact. They were activated through his tablet computer and started vibrating. They looked like a bunch of troops waiting for orders. After 2 months of accumulation, Han Xiao's skills had improved again, thus, his existing machinery had been renewed and strengthened. The spider detector was equipped with a low-level smart chip that automatically detected threats and fed them back to the computer. Hence, there was no need for Han Xiao to constantly refer to the screen. By adding a new drawing SUI anti-radar detection coating, it could better conceal its tracks, which was suitable for designated surveillance. Han Xiao sent most of the spider detectors into the woods and left a few to advance in the opposite direction to scout for the Germinal organization's arrival. While doing this job, Frenzied Sword got off the truck and noticed an extra line of words appearing in the status column. You've gained severe car sickness. 30% deducted from all attributes. What the hell is this? Frenzied Sword was flabbergasted. The experience feel he set was 20% true. He did not fully experience the thrill of the old driver's driving skills, but the interface showed his physical state truthfully. Need me to do anything? Frenzied Sword asked, thinking he could trigger a mission. Han Xiao shook his head. Not at the moment. Frenzied Sword's combat strength was too low for this type of battle. He would only be useful as fearless cannon fodder. Various minefields and radar detections had been laid in the woods a long time ago. Anyone entering the area would draw attention. Patience, adequate preparation, perfect planning, and calibrating other mechanical weapons were all he needed to do for the time being. There were still a few days before the arrival of the Germinal organization's troops. Han Xiao had been preparing and waiting in the van. Frenzied Sword was by his side, receiving small tasks from him every day. Even though he thought that Frenzied Sword had potential, he would not groom Frenzied Sword fully. The EXP he gave Frenzied Sword was limited compared to those players in the same period, yet Frenzied Sword was extremely satisfied. Han Xiao was also reading the forum every day. The players were still as enthusiastic as before. He mainly paid attention to the aquamarine section to know the progress of the players. It was still the novice phase. After they had grown, there would be a huge event that targeted the players waiting for them, and that was the prelude to the chaos. Does me disrupting the quest mean that the players' misfortunes will be delayed, or will they be brought forward? Han Xiao rubbed his beard stubble, silently pondering. That was the first time the players had raised the attention of major forces on the planet. He still remembered that the previous generations had caused a ruckus that resulted in an extensive discussion, which was highly praised. The moon was covered by dark clouds, and there was a thick fog that made it impossible to make out one's own hand. Spider number 1 was in the plains under the night sky, motionless, and faithfully executing the orders in sequence. Boom! The ground suddenly vibrated, and Spider No. 1's sensor felt the tremors. The detector immediately charged toward the direction of the vibrations. A huge fleet of Germinal troops could be seen in the distance, and Spider number 1 was right in their path. Spider number 1 loyally transmitted out an alarm signal in the form of electric waves. The vehicle was nearing, yet Spider number 1 foolishly remained, not knowing to hide. Whoosh! The huge fleet rapidly rolled past, leaving a cloud of smoke behind. It was not until the smoke and dust dispersed that the appearance of Spider number 1 could be made out. Its body was covered in dust, yet it was not damaged in any ways. It seemed like the compressed wheels surprisingly did not grind over it at all. Spider number 1 moved its limbs and turned around before continuing to follow its orders and dumbly following the fleet. Chapter 137, A Wild Black Phantom, 1. Han Xiao's tablet received real-time alerts from Spider number 1. He immediately hopped off the driving seat of the truck and signaled Frenzied Sword, who had been waiting online for 2 whole days. Han Xiao remembered that the VR capsule of this era had yet to perfect the body analysis and nutrients balancing functions. No wonder he is a professional player. Guy's got great kidneys. Let's go, Han Xiao said. Okay, Frenzied Sword was confused, but following Han Xiao would never be a bad choice. The pitch-black truck had a layer of Sui anti-radar paint coated over it. Han Xiao came up with this using the basic theory of spatial sensing, and it had been effective at reducing the chance of being discovered by radars. The second the armies from Stardragon and Germinal met each other, a massive war would break out. That would be the perfect time for a third party to take advantage of the situation. First, they needed to find a suitable hideout to snipe from. It needed to be some distance away from the battlefield. Han Xiao had found a spot long ago, and it was a cliff along the mountainous range in Cloud Valley. That location was perfect for aiming at the barren fields beyond the forest. This meant that the moment the Germinal organization's troops stepped out from the jungle, he could start firing away. The only problem was that he had to arrive at the mountain range fast and avoid getting detected by the army radars in the process. The painted layer could not guarantee evading detection, so there were risks of getting exposed. However, Han Xiao was not too worried because by the time Germinal's troops drew near, the army in the valley would be too occupied to be bothered with him. The truck sped into the valley jungle. Commander Huang. The radar is showing a suspicious target, shouted a soldier in the Stardragon Strategic Department tent. Huang Qiuming strode over to the radar display screen, which was showing a flashing light entering Cloud Valley region. The signal was inconsistent and weak, and it seemed that the target had a certain level of anti-radar capabilities. It only showed up because Stardragon Army was using an army radar this time, which was extremely powerful. Only one target. Huang Qiuming's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. He felt that it might be a Germinal scout, but the location of target was very far off from the path that Germinal was taking. Whatever it is, just deal with it first. Huang Qiuming did not want any unwanted surprise elements to hinder the plan, and he was about to send out a standby troop when all the radar detection screens blacked out simultaneously. What's happening? Huang Qiuming shouted. Soldiers rushed to recalibrate but to no avail. Reporting to you, sir. The radars have been deactivated by very strong electromagnetic radiation, which is coming from the direction of the Germinal army. We found the Germinal army's tracks 3 minutes ago, and the preliminary conclusion is that they have some sort of advanced device that can destroy radars. They want to take away our sight. Activate the spare radars, mute their electrical signals. Make sure they are powered on randomly once every 5 to 12 seconds. Huang Qiuming seemed composed and quickly issued his commands. As for the suspicious target, he could only leave it aside. It was more critical to deal with the huge Germinal army at this point in time. Whoosh! Suddenly, a screeching sound could be heard coming from the horizon. A dozen mid-range missiles were steadily approaching Stardragon camps, leaving fiery trails behind them. These missiles suddenly split into countless bullet heads in midair and started raining down. At the same time, the Germinal army emerged from the jungle region on the edge of Cloud Valley. Booger's face was dead serious. The vehicles were carrying anti-radar equipment, created by the Germinal organization, that was still in the experimental stages. It was capable of catching radar detection and emitting strong long-distance M radiation waves that could destroy radars that were in use, all while simultaneously detecting the exact location of the enemy's radars. Ugur decided that he had found the enemy's base, so he ordered for the Beehive-type missile assault vehicle to launch attacks, firing the cluster munition missiles, which was a mature weapon that had already gone past the experimental stage. What he did not know was that he had indirectly done Han Xiao a favor by destroying Star Dragon's radars. Surely, such attacks could not injure the Star Dragon army. Indeed, the Star Dragon army aimed and fired their missile-intercepting machine guns toward the cluster ammunition, creating explosions and intercepting the bullets in mid-air. Both sides were ready for the battle. The only question here was, who was more prepared? Enemies will soon reactivate their radars. We don't have much time left, we need to launch attacks now. Ugur commanded in a dead serious tone, "Bomb detecting team, you go first." With the vehicles carrying portable bomb detectors leading the way, the Germinal troops were able to quickly detect where Star Dragon had planted bombs and detonate them with their machine gun. Germinal was steadily and safely advancing. This time, when the anti-radar equipment discovered signals from Star Dragon's radars, it was unable to destroy the radars as Star Dragon's radar would switch off before anything could be done to it. Ugur knew that the real fight would be starting soon. The helicopter's rotors were roaring as they flew close to the ground. The Germinal troops had to advance against the merciless firing. Among the flames and explosions, Ugur commanded in fury, "Fire the graphite missiles." A handful of graphite missiles soared through the air, landing among the helicopters. Graphite missiles could cause local short circuit, hitting the helicopter squad hard, causing many to malfunction. The enemy firepower was reduced significantly. "My hawks, after your troop gets out from the jungle, lead the assault troops to fight the enemies head-on. Your task is very important, you have to distract the enemies." Ugur spoke into the walkie-talkie. My Hawks was sitting in one of the transport vehicles, and he replied with a light grunt. My Hawks was extremely well built, and he was a master of martial arts. His strategic task was to lead a few teams of elite fighters to assault the enemy camps with bombs. His agile combat style, coupled with bulletproof vest, allowed him to dive smoothly through the bullet storm. Superhumans were mainly assigned to assault and assassinate on the battlefields. At the Star Dragon base, Huan Kai stared at the Germinal army expressionlessly as they trod through the jungle. "Artillery, get ready, armored vehicles, stand by, elite team, prepare to fight the enemy assault team." Star Dragon's elite team consisted of the strongest and the best soldiers, including superhumans who were biologically equipped with skills to fight. Star Dragon was very prepared for this battle. This large-scale battle scene left the logistic team leaders Sleepy Winter, Flash Fried Rice, and Rainy Kim in awe. Judging from the intense atmosphere, hazy smoke, and deafening explosions, they knew that the battle was too high level for them to join in. "Thought I was going to die when the missiles flew over just now." Twinkle Fried Rice heaved a sigh of relief. Sleepy Winter laughed bitterly. "Let's just stick to delivering resources. No way we can handle any battle tasks." Rainy Kim's expression was calm. With a hint of determination, she said, "I want to give it a shot. We only have a few handguns, what can we do? I want to try." "Forget it. If we go, we will just court our own deaths. I want to try." Sleepy Winter and Twinkle Fried Rice made eye contact and relented. Okay. You're the boss, you are the prettiest. We'll follow you. Let's go together." Expressionless, Rainy Kim started walking right away after getting their agreement, and the other two could not do anything but keep up behind her. It was a party of gunfire and explosions. Han Xiao slowly drove his car to the target location on the cliff, where he could see the grand fireworks in the distance in the jungle. There were spider detectors hidden in the jungle. Some of them had been destroyed, but some lived and were loyally updating the battle situation for Han Xiao. Judging from their location, Germinal troops were going to get out of the jungle and into the open fields very soon. In the distance, on the Tidramara River, explosions appeared on the surface of the water as well. Han Xiao took out his binoculars, and he could see that the Germinal ships were also getting attacked, and the attack was worse than the one they were facing in the valley. Germinal ships had yet to reach the straits, and they were already getting bombed heavily by fighter jets. The missiles rained down like a storm, and the machine gun interceptor array would not stop even for a second. Huge fiery explosions lit up the night sky and seemed just like fireworks. It's time to get ready. Han Xiao took out a few foldable battery ports, came up with a task with decent rewards, and issued it to Frenzied Sword. Tasks like setting up traps and stuff were obviously for these fresh, young players. As Frenzied Sword rushed off to set up the traps, Han Xiao took out a mechanical neck brace and wore it around the back of his neck. It was a soft layer made from unknown material. He turned it on, and a numbing electric shock started to spread from his neck to his brain. Han Xiao shivered slightly and felt adrenaline rush through his body. You have entered excitation mode. All attributes plus 5%. Duration, 20 minutes. This machine was called Electromagnetic Pulse Controller. It was a special piece of equipment that used M-waves to adjust biological conditions and improve the user's attributes. Han Xiao had gotten this blueprint from talent fusing by accident. After getting ready, with all the needed attributes turned on, Han Xiao lay down with his ghost sniper rifle in hand and the red falcon lying next to him. His eyes were sharp as eagles, and they were glued to the battlefield. Boom! An area of trees was blown up. The Germinal troops had finally made it out of the forest. Come on, baby. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and aimed. Chapter 138, A Wild Black Phantom, 2. Airstrike. Star Dragon's missile-carrying vehicles fired mercilessly at the Germinal troops. The missiles approached with high-pitched screeches, adding to the heavy atmosphere. Uger did not panic. He commanded the troops to close up the gaps in their formation, with the vehicles carrying multi-barreled machine guns at the front, forming an assault formation. This reduced the area of target, and the machine guns destroyed all the missiles in the area in midair, forming a vacuum, allowing the troops to smoothly sail through the explosion waves. Huan Kai paused. He had just received news that the battle at Tadramara River was at a heated stage. The strategic team had primarily marked out a few locations where Germinal teams could have gathered. The strategic team advised him to change from the original plan to use Plan B. Huan Kai made some rearrangements and instructed the interception ring to leave a gap. At the same time, Rainy Kim and the others made it to the front line. Large number of soldiers gathered with proper attire and equipment, armored vehicles had their engines running, and elite soldiers were standing by. How are we going to join in the fight? Sleepy Winter asked helplessly. Rainy Kim frowned and thought for a while before nodding. I don't know. Then why are you nodding? Sleepy Winter wanted to bang his head against the floor. Twinkle Fried Rice suddenly pointed to the battlefield and shouted, someone is coming. OSH*T. It looks like a high-level player. The other two turned to look in the same direction. They watched as a buff man led a team of well-armed soldiers on heavy armored motorbikes to separate from the main troop. They sped toward the Star Dragon base while smoothly dodging all the bullets. Mihawks dodged a series of attacks on his heavy armored bike, but he inadvertently triggered a mine, and his bike was blown apart. He began to run, at a speed almost as fast as the motorbikes, through the bullets. His task was to deliver the bomb that he was carrying to the Star Dragon base. Superhumans usually fought in assault teams on the battlefields. Mihawks could see that the enemies had sent their elite teams toward them. He concentrated expressionlessly and adjusted his inner energy to save up for later. Suddenly, Mihawks instinctively felt that there was imminent danger. He reacted extremely quickly, pushed hard with his legs, and was going to change direction. But he was not fast enough. A bullet with blue light trailing behind it hit Mihawk's neck from the side and caused a huge splatter of blood. He was critically injured. He groaned and spat out mouthfuls of blood. There was absolutely no cover on the fields. His only choice was to keep running forward, but his wound caused him to slow down significantly. A combat fighter, who could fight through gunfire, had been critically injured by one shot. Huan Kai was shocked. That was not us. Who's the sniper? He remembered the suspicious target that had been detected at the start and felt that this shot seems really familiar. He pondered for 2 seconds, and his eyes widened. Only a monster sniper could critically damage a superhuman, the Black Phantom that only recently had become involved in underground activities. Bullet with blue light, it must be him. What is he doing here? Why help us? Commander, what do we do now? The vice captain asked. Huan Kai considered and made up his mind decisively. He doesn't seem to be our enemy. Don't mind him, just focus on fighting Germinal. Usually, snipers' skills would be of very limited use in this kind of battle, but when super snipers like Black Phantom came into the picture, it would be a completely different story. The Star Dragon did not know why Black Phantom was helping them, but needless to say, this helped them greatly. Uger was furious. One shot to critically injure my Hawks, that must be that damned Black Phantom? Not long ago, he got Freyr's team too. This monster must have joined the fight at Star Dragon's request. Uger felt immense pressure when he thought of Black Phantom's kill statistics that had been circulating on the dark web. He had been crowned a superhuman killer way too dangerous. Even though Uger was stronger than my Hawks, he did not want to have a taste of Black Phantom's strength. Mistaking Han Xiao for someone on Star Dragon's side, Uger angrily commanded, Team 3, locate and terminate the sniper. Take the test subjects with you, you must at least divert his attention away from us. One armored vehicle left the main troop and sped toward Han Xiao's location. You have dealt 1,297 actual damage to my Hawks, LV-40. You have critically damaged my Hawks. My Hawks has entered a weakened state. All attributes have decreased 50% for 10 seconds. Wow, this guy is quite tanky. Han Xiao was surprised. This shot's theoretical damage was 1,600. Taking combat fighters' body attributes into consideration, it would be about 1,300. This had knocked out Bai Jin, who was LV-48, in one hit, but my Hawks was still up and running. Combat fighters are indeed very tanky. This time Flaming Will was not too good, it only buffed his attack by 148%. His Ghost Sniper rifle had been maxed out in all its attributes after the strengthening. None of the EXP earned had gone to waste. Han Xiao either saved the EXP or used it to level up skills, talents, and equipment, which were the key to having strong firepower. After his first shot, Han Xiao activated a new task. Tidramara River Warfare, Miscellaneous, you have joined in the battle between Star Dragon and the Germinal organization. Since you have chosen your side, see what you can do for your allies. This was a Class C mission. The player had to kill Germinal soldiers and prevent them from escaping. Reward would be based on task performance. The reward EXP shouldn't be less than 300,000. Han Xiao was satisfied that he could earn EXP by being a busybody. Han Xiao fired single shots at my Hawks, who could not escape the fate of being swallowed by the explosions and shots. His death was tragic. This marked the end of a combat fighter who was even stronger than Pan Kuang. Combat fighters are great in close quarters against few people, but if you want to deal with armies, even if it's not technologically advanced, you must at least be half as strong as Bennett, Han Xiao thought to himself. Combat fighting makes use of energy. Everyone wants to be a hero, and combat fighting allows fighters to dominate whenever and wherever, without the need of weapons. However, even though the style of fighting is very strong, one must have gone through the necessary growth. C-Class marks this line, the level cap for players of in the 1.0 version. The snipers had greatly weakened the assault team, which had been caught by the counter troops from Star Dragon. The assault plan had barely started and was already failing terribly under Han Xiao's intervention. At this moment, he noticed that a troop had veered off from the Germinal main troop and was moving toward him. He changed his target and started firing using the Red Falcon sniper gun. Because Star Dragon was also present, Han Xiao intentionally avoided using the high explosive bullets. A sniper rifle could only deal limited damage to armored cars, so Han Xiao activated the portable battery that had been set up beforehand. 300 meters in front of the Germinal troop, 4 portable batteries transformed into small multi-barreled machine guns. They fired rapidly, and some of the armored vehicles exploded on the spot. The remaining soldiers had to spread out and launch counterattacks on the portable batteries. Once the team spread out, the portable battery was a lot less effective because it had to rotate and aim instead of aiming at one spot. The portable batteries did not have defensive mechanisms, even if Han Xiao used platinum as the surface material, and 2 out of 4 were blown to bits very quickly. Overall, the result was good. More than half of the vehicles were destroyed, and the enemies were significantly weakened. At this moment, the troops did something that Han Xiao did not expect. They opened the rear of one of the armored vehicles. 3 humanoids jumped out of the car and ran toward the portable batteries at a speed faster than car. They looked really strange, and Frenzied Sword was taken aback. What in the world are those things? Frenzied Sword wanted to use detection on them but was informed that he was too far away. The 3 humanoids were well built and expressionless. There were large amounts of metallic joints and structures inside the arms, legs, and spinal regions. The metal was fixed into the bones at joints, such as in their knees and elbows. As they were running, the metallic joints would have blood seeping out. There was no doubt that every movement would inflict great pain, but the trio seemed emotionless as if they could not feel any pain. Moreover, there was a layer of thin armor growing from the skin of the humanoids. Han Xiao recognized the humanoids the second he saw them. Chapter 139, A Wild Black Phantom, 3. Germinal Super Soldier Project has been brought forward a year? Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. This project was originally intended to create humanoids with battle potential. Through exoskeleton cybernetics, they improved test subjects' physical capabilities by experimentation. Through the pure strength of the technology, it supported their physical body, and as a result, warriors with the battle power of super soldiers could be mass-produced. However, the technology was still in its infancy. The process was very painful because the exoskeleton had to be directly connected to the nerves, and various mechanical parts had to be implanted into the body to strengthen the physique. Only experimented Valkyrie specimens whose mental resilience was strengthened could withstand such modifications. At the end of it all, their sense of pain would fade away, and they would only move on instinct. By the whole of Galaxy's standards, it was a very undeveloped modification technique and had already been eliminated long ago. But on Aquamarine, the Germinal organization was able to develop the technique further by neglecting the physical condition of the test subjects. The exoskeleton was not only a piece of equipment that could be worn externally, but it could also be infused as a part of the body. Doing so would connect one's nerves to the armor, giving the person greater mobility. However, the Germinal organization had yet to develop the technology to maturity. By experimentation, they only managed to develop to infant stages of the technology. Aquamarine's major players each held one or a few advanced skills, and nerve integration was an advancement knowledge that was in Germinal's hands. The advanced skill that Han Xiao had learned was only advanced material composition. For the players on Aquamarine to obtain the advancement knowledge, they had to have a large contribution after entering the camp. Han Xiao set his sights to the very distant future. Advancement knowledge was very rare on Aquamarine, but in the long term, one could also spend some Aquamarine dollars to obtain it easily. If he were unable to obtain other advancement knowledge from Aquamarine, there would still be other opportunities to do so in the future. In the original plan, these super soldiers had special effects, but the 3 experimental super soldiers before him were not yet complete. The bodies even had a large amount of heat armor equipped, and these 3 were only using the external exoskeletons to strengthen their physiques, which were also incomplete. Looks like Germinal's experimental project hasn't matured yet. Exoskeletons. Come to think of it, when I was escaping the lab, I left a lightweight mechanical arm behind. Seems like Germinal has been using it to experiment. Han Xiao's eyes lit up. Such a thought was not without reason. The 3 test subjects' mechanical arms resembled the lightweight mechanical arm. They were very sturdy and even had extendable golden shields embedded that could block shots fired by the portable batteries. The 3 test subjects separated from the vehicles and started spreading out the firepower from the portable batteries. The 3 successfully drew close to the portable battery, bombarding it with countless attacks using their fists wrapped in exoskeleton armor. The exoskeleton that was rooted to the joints released smoke. As they used more power, they instantly destroyed the portable battery, causing it to fall to its side as it cracked open. After taking down the remaining portable batteries, the 3 sprinted toward Han Xiao, each step moving them 7 to 8 meters ahead, with an overwhelming killing intent completely directed toward him. Han Xiao's gaze remained unfazed as he pulled out his tablet, quickly unleashing another hidden weapon. The trailer shook violently as 2 second-generation rovers rushed out to Han Xiao's side. Instantly, they activated Furious Fusillade. With both hands, the machine gun released its rounds, as their chests shot out many rocket missiles, ravaging the 3 test subjects. The damage was dealt heavily but was almost entirely blocked by the exoskeleton armor, with only its endurance dropping. The 3 test subjects' stats were also exposed. Based on your level, you acquired the following information. Super Soldier Experimental Body, 042. Level, 40. Classes. Special Agent LV.10. Low-level Machine Equipment LV.30, Endurance to Health Conversion Ratio 110. Attributes, 51 Strength, 54 Dex, 70, 80, Endurance, 25 Intel, 8 Mystic, 4 Charm, 6 Luck. Energy, 0. Energy Rank, 500. Grade, E. Health Points, 534/650. Status, violent modifications, health point -150, endurance -10. Abilities. Low-level spiritual resilience, +3 psychological resistance. Effective training, +100 health points. Immunity to pain, injuries do not affect combat ability. Skills. Basic close quarter combat LV.7. Basic shooting LV.5. Capture LV.3. Precise shooting LV.1. Equipment. Crane exoskeleton arms. Lightweight mechanical arms, equipped with extendable golden shield. Grade, white. Basic stats. Damage, 32 to 45. Defense, 20 to 24. Power level, 45. Endurance, 250. Ability effect, +8 strength. Predator power legs. Lightweight cyborg legs increase sprinting speed. Grade, gray. Basic stats. Damage, 27 to 31. Defense, 15 to 18. Power level, 53. Endurance, 230. Ability effect, +8 dexterity. P2 embedded armor inserts. Implanted lightweight gold in the skin, provides some defensive ability. Grade, gray. Basic stats. Defense, 15 to 20. Endurance, 500. The three test subjects' stats were considered extremely low for LV40. With such a high level but low level stats, it meant that they had no potential. Individually, their health points were very low, but the defense and endurance provided by the exoskeleton was able to reduce the damage to the body to a large extent. Han Xiao did some calculations and realized that the set of exoskeleton armor provided 1,460 endurance points, and nearly 100 defense points. This was the effect due to the equipment. If they only looked at the health points, one would think that it was just a useless clothed armor. The second generation rovers fired several rounds, which only took off a fifth of their health bar. Han Xiao realized that experimental body, 044, was actually at LV45, and his stats were at an even higher level than his two counterparts. Perhaps he was the leader of the three. Meanwhile, Germinal's vehicle team circled back. With the two rovers' firepower, it was difficult to monitor both sides. Han Xiao immediately made a decision. Take the briefcase with the red triangle marking from the trailer. I have something I want you to do. Frenzied Sword instantly carried out the orders, carrying the briefcase in hand. Inside it was a bomb with massive destructive power. Han Xiao quickly scribbled down the task and tossed it over. Brave sacrifice, take your unfulfilled dreams and explode into glorious sparks. Frenzied Sword unconsciously gulped down his saliva. Go for it, youngster. I'll leave the stage to you, Han Xiao casually remarked as he continued to barrage the test subject with attacks. I got it, Frenzied Sword clenched his jaw. The rewards from the task were extremely attractive and could definitely make up for the death penalty. The strengthened Red Falcon released a series of shots, leaving bullet holes in the three experimental subjects' bodies. Han Xiao's aggressive abilities had already reached the maximum level. Through the cracks in the exoskeleton, he dealt damage straight to the flesh. His attacks were on point, restricting the three test subjects. Soon, No 042 was shot in his vitals by the barrage of attacks. His health bar receded to 0 as he fell to the ground, dead. The other two, however, were nonchalant to the death of their ally, continuing to charge forth. On the other side, the other military truck closed in rapidly toward them. Han Xiao redirected the second-generation rover toward it, opening fire against several military vehicles. The tightly packed firing left red streaks amid them, as though it was a rainbow that linked them together. The rover's endurance rapidly fell. Seeing that they could not withstand the attacks, Han Xiao commanded the rover to dive into the team and execute the self-destruct function. The enemy, unable to react in time, was enveloped in striking flames that swallowed up several vehicles as a series of explosions ensued. Both sides were decimated at once. With the loss of two second-generation rovers, Han Xiao remained unfazed. Technology-based warfare was just like that, money burning. But he was indeed generous. If it was another player, they definitely could not bear to do such a thing. However, Han Xiao had all the money he needed. The sniper rifle had a limit to its firing speed. Finally, both test subjects were within 50 meters of him. Frenzied Sword remembered the contents of the task. Steadying his heart, he leaped forward, lunging onto No. 043 as a fist pierced through his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood and clenched his teeth as he activated the bomb in the briefcase. Boom! A mini mushroom-shaped cloud rose up into the skies. The sweltering wave of hot air mixed with dust exploded, and the fully equipped Han Xiao was splattered with dirt. Through the smoke, the debilitated No. 044 experimental body rushed over again. In the moment when the explosion took place, No. 043 was ahead of him in the rush and exploded into nothingness. No. 044 immediately dropped to the ground and was still able to move as his gaze oozed with bloodlust. With only the last 10 meters left, in a second, he would be able to lodge his steel fist into that foul sniper. At that moment, Flaming Will finished its cooldown. Han Xiao suddenly threw aside Red Falcon, reloaded the ghost sniper as he activated Overload, reinforcing it with Flaming Will, and fired. The bullet, with blue light trailing behind it, disappeared from sight as it shot straight through No. 044's head. Blood spurted out like an arrow, leaving a thin, long streak of blood on No. 044. No. 044 took several steps forward without losing momentum. Suddenly, his body tilted, falling to Han Xiao's feet. Just one more step, and he would have been able to reach Han Xiao. His still eyes had a trace of unwillingness. This scene was far too familiar to Han Xiao. Fighting with a mechanic, distance was always the determining factor between a win or a loss. Many other enemies had fallen right before reaching their target, just like this. It's a shame. Even if you managed to engage me in close-quarter combat, you wouldn't have lived. Han Xiao shook his head. There were still many cards that he had not shown yet. These immature test subjects were far from his match. Second advancement. Current progress, 1/3. The battle this time could be considered an easy fight. Mass-produced assembly line soldiers were the easiest enemies for him to take on. There's still 2 more. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He only needed 2 more higher-level kills before he could increase his rank. The interface displayed a sea of EXP, and he was looking forward to advancing his skills. Frenzied Sword sacrificed his virgin death. 10 seconds later, he was revived next to the trailer. Looking at the quest rewards and enemy kill experience, he could not hold back his grin. The Germinal team that had come to intercept him had been eliminated. The heated battlegrounds were already at the pinnacle of its battle. Star Dragons and Germinal's foot soldiers had both been massacred. The battle was at a standstill and in a complete mess. Han Xiao spared a few glances and decidedly knew that he would no longer get a chance to interfere. After contemplating for 2 seconds, he quickly made a decision. He beckoned the grinning Frenzied Sword onto the car. The vehicle continued to travel onward, circling around the heat of the battle, and headed in the direction of the Tidramara River. In the battlegrounds, Sleepy Winter taunted, "Did I see that right? Is that Frenzied Sword?" Han Xiao's battle was very conspicuous. They saw Frenzied Sword's ID floating above his head and got a shock. Twinkle Fried Rice was at a loss, even the cold, prideful Rainy Kim had her mouth wide open. Sleepy Winter remembered that even at the internal examinations, Frenzied Sword rejected his goodwill and did not enter the Star Dragon army. So, how could he be on the battleground now? And by self-destructing, he defeated a high-level monster. They saw all of it happen. If my eyes didn't play tricks on me, that black-clothed person he's following, that was the Black Phantom, who appeared a while ago at Bighorn Mountain, Rainy Kim suddenly said. Are you sure about that? Sleepy Winter asked. I recorded the entire battle just now. Just watch it and you'll know, Twinkle Fried Rice said. Sleepy Winter seemed to be a little depressed. Frenzied Sword and the 3 of them had started on the same foot, but now he seemed to have gotten way ahead of them. It made Sleepy Winter feel a little pressured, and curious as well. No wonder he didn't want to join us during the internal beta. What exactly happened to Frenzied Sword? Why is he with Black Phantom?